Yo, Dave Loughran here with another super important video to get you prepped for your drafts. Now, I know that we love taking risks in fantasy football, especially in the later rounds where we're hunting down that untapped upside that's going mostly overlooked. Quarterback is a perfect position for that, especially this season with so much depth in the back end of the draft, and especially in best ball leagues where risk and uncertainty are totally your friend. You're trying to win a large field tournament, right? You're not trying to take home the trophy in a 12-team home league, even though this video is also 100% for you as well, so don't go anywhere. But in best ball, your natural strategy has to change. And this video isn't specifically for best ball either, but July is best ball drafting season. And that means that Underdog Fantasy has two huge tournaments drafting right now. One with over $1 million to first place and a $3.5 million prize pool, which is the biggest in best ball history, and another with up to $50,000 up top and only $5 to enter. I've absolutely loved drafting over there at Underdog, and there's no doubt that if you're not already over there, you're going to love it too. Use the promo code Awesemo when you get started. That's AWESEMO. You'll get $25 when you sign up and deposit. Head over to Underdog Fantasy, use that promo code Awesemo, get your $25, and start drafting today. You're going to love it. Now let's get to our top 6 late round quarterbacks to draft in 2020. But before we do, do me a favor, if you don't mind, if you've enjoyed these videos and you think they've helped you out along the way, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and leave a comment on what you think about the players on this list. I read all the comments, I respond to all the comments, even if they're not so flattering. Let's get into it. Matt Ryan has attempted 600 plus passes in 7 of his last 9 seasons and has finished with at least 25 touchdowns and 4,500 plus passing yards in all but one of those years. And while he's had a couple disappointing campaigns along the way, Ryan has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 8 of his last 11 seasons and has clocked quarterback 12, 7, 2, 14, and 3 performances over the last 5 years. Another thing about Ryan that often goes overlooked is his ability to stay healthy. Ryan has missed 1 game since 2010 and 3 of a possible 208 games for his career. So while Julio Jones is no longer in Atlanta, Ryan will still be equipped with some excellent pass-catching options in Calvin Ridley, who I think could legitimately finish as the wide receiver 1 this season, but definitely inside the top 5, and Kyle Pitts, who became the highest selected tight end in NFL draft history just a few months back. Russell Gage is a respectable third option in the passing game, and Mike Davis is a perfectly capable receiver out of the backfield too. Ryan led the league in passing attempts last season, was 4th in yards, and 12th in touchdowns. And that was with Jones completing only 7 games. Ryan was also 3rd in red zone attempts and targets to the end zone. And with 2 serious threats inside the 20 like Pitts and Ridley, who caught 7 of his 9 scores inside the 20 last year, there's reason to believe Ryan could easily cross the 30 touchdown threshold again this season. Ryan is currently the 17th quarterback going off the board with an ADP of 138 on Underdog Fantasy. He makes for a fantastic stacking option with Ridley, Pitts, Gage, or even a late round flyer like Olamide Zaccheaus, and has one of the highest floors at his position. Now we just need him to produce one of those ceiling years like we've seen him do plenty of times in the past. Aaron Rodgers is coming off an MVP season in Green Bay where he threw for a career-high 48 touchdowns and accounted for 51 scores overall. Amazingly, he finishes the QB3, not the QB1, behind Josh Allen and Kyler Murray, which just proves how valuable rushing upside is for quarterbacks who may not be elite passers like Rodgers. We'll get to that in a little bit. Since being installed as the Packers' full-time starter back in 2008, Rodgers has posted top 2 finishes at his position in 7 of 11 seasons, where he played at least 15 games. The other 4 finishes, 3rd, 7th, 10th, and 11th. He's currently being drafted as the QB 13 with a 112 ADP on Underdog, and as I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, basically no player is undraftable if they fall far enough in the draft. With the uncertainty swirling around Rodgers' status in Green Bay, there's no way we're drafting him as a top 5 or 6 quarterback right now, which is where he'd likely be going otherwise. But taking a shot on him outside of the starter range is huge. This is also where drafting earlier in the summer can help pay huge dividends if you're smart about it. And it's looking more and more like he'll play this year, whether that's for the Packers or somewhere else. But even if the damage in Green Bay is irreparable, there are teams who would surely love to have the 3-time MVP on their roster. Rodgers' lack of rushing upside limits his ceiling, and he's actually only eclipsed 4,500 passing yards once in his career. But he had the second lowest percentage of bad passes in the league last year at 14.3%. Deshaun Watson led the league at 14.2%. Rodgers was sacked on only 3.5% of his dropbacks and led the
said, but sure. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. I tried to convince everybody to just play the strategy show from this morning, but no one would let it happen. So we're doing it again anyway. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are here to break down 11 games and honestly, potentially 10 if we keep going. And who knows if the Marlins decide to participate in today's slate. But Adam, how's your day going so far?
Going pretty well. Nice to have some lineups to talk about now. You know, maybe we'll get a pitcher for the Marlins sometime before the slate starts.
I'll take the lineup as well. That would be fine too.
Yeah, it also help.
Fully unconfirmed with an hour and 57 minutes. Well, just under 2 hours, 7:05 start. So we'll get there when we get there. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And shout out to our presenting sponsor for this show, JockMarket. We will touch on JockMarket in a little bit, but we don't have the same buffer that we normally have because Live Before Lock comes up immediately after this. So we need to dive in if you're interested.
Yeah.
All right, first one up. This should be a blast. A game with no line and no legitimate total. So we're going with 4.6 runs for the Nats and 4.4 for the Marlins. 9-run overall. I have no idea. John Lester, it appears, is definitely pitching for the Nats. Whether it's, I already forgot the guy's name, or Ross Detweiler, we can go either direction.
I mean,
there we go. Ross Detweiler listed as starter for Marlins on Monday.
Yeah, we talked about it before the show. Yeah,
well, listed is up in the air a little bit, but not Nick Neidert as we originally thought. It is Ross Detweiler coming in at a crisp 4K on DK. Does it even matter who's starting at pitcher for the Nats or for the Marlins?
Well, I mean, we know who's starting for the Nats, but it doesn't.
Sure.
But
it doesn't matter either way, right?
Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, not really, because like Detweiler is not going deep enough into this game that you're going to even consider him. Not that you probably would anyway, but you're probably getting a maximum 2 or 3 innings there. So essentially, it's a bullpen game, and for the Nats, it kind of doesn't even matter because like Trey Turner, Juan Soto, and Josh Bell are going to be high upside plays regardless of who is pitching at any point for the Marlins. Everyone else in the lineup is kind of garbage regardless of who is pitching for the Marlins. And so if you're rostering them, it's probably just to round out a stack that includes Turner, Bell, and Soto. So it kind of just doesn't matter either way. And we did just get the rest of the lineup from Miami as well.
Ooh, well, that is nice. Does that matter to you at all? How do you feel? Ooh, my chef press got delivered. Anyway, does it matter to you at all? It was just a pop-up on my computer. I wouldn't have known any other way. Do you want to get to the Marlins or the Nats in this game?
I'm more interested, I think, in like one-offs and mini stacks because neither team obviously has 5 hitters that are really good. For Miami, though, you do have some right-handed power that can do damage against Lester. Adam Duvall, in particular, at 4,700. Starling Marte is not in the lineup, so it's an even weaker lineup than normal. Garrett Cooper's on the injured list as well. But Jesus Aguilar, Adam Duvall, John Birdie batting second, even Alfaro batting fifth as a cheap catcher option. I think those guys, they're in a pretty good spot against Lester, who really just isn't missing bats this year. He's giving up power to righties. So I think those guys look pretty good. And then on the other side for the Nats, the Escobar at the top, and then basically from Andrew Stevenson down, there's not a whole lot there to be excited about. But Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Josh Bell, you can even include a cheap Josh Harrison batting fifth, makes for, I think, a pretty decent, middle of the order there. You can grab one-offs or mini stacks from.
I have no problem. Like, I think the Marlins are actively a better option today, which is kind of crazy. It just so happens that like the legitimate best bats happen to be on the Nats. But if I'm going anywhere, I would be going to Miami. My actual guess would be that I wouldn't be going to anybody, that neither side is all that interesting. I don't have anything else to add here unless you want to keep going.
No, that's all I have for that one.
And just to double check, we might as well get this out of the way right now. It appears the only real problem from a weather perspective is going to be the San Diego and Atlanta game, which is incredibly relevant from a pitching perspective, which we will get to when we get to it. But I do want to just put that out there right out of the gate for everybody. Let's move it on to Blue Jays and Red Sox. 5.6 run implied total for the Jays, 4.9 for the Sox. It's Ross Stripling. It's Nick Pavetta. Neither guy picking up any ownership. Are you feeling any differently about Stripling or Pavetta compared to where we were this morning?
No, I still have trouble getting to either guy here. I mean, both offenses have so much upside, such a dangerous spot for these pitchers. And I think that if you are looking for lower owned pitching on the slate, there's still some spots that you can get to that you don't need to go to Stripling or Pavetta in a hitter's park, against dangerous offenses. So if I were to go to one side, I think I agree with what you said this morning, and that Stripling looks a little bit better to me. The strikeout percentage is relatively good for the slate at 24.5%. He's not a bad pitcher, but again, it's just not really a price that I want to pay for him against the Red Sox in this park.
So how do we manage the bats here? Blue Jays, Rays, Reds, all with very, very comparable implied run totals at the top of the list. Red Sox not too shabby either, where they're standing. Which side of this game do you like a little bit more from the hitting?
I like the bats for Boston. Boston actually a little bit better. Stripling is a pretty good pitcher, but he has given up some power this year. And then you also just get some good value from the Red Sox as well. So you have Jarren Duran batting second, who's only 2,300 on DraftKings. That looks like a really, really good value. Bogarts, Devers, of course, are going to be good plays pretty much always. Same goes for JD Martinez. Verdugo is batting sixth, so he dropped in the order, but still at 3,500, it's a pretty good value there as well. So I like both offenses, but I actually lean towards the Red Sox a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning that same direction. They're pretty comparably owned. Jays pulling a little bit more ownership than Boston, but nothing too crazy. It's all single digits on Boston. Bo Bichette gets to 12%. That's the high number. The Jays are actually a little bit more owned on FanDuel as of right now. And clearly the Blue Jays, a little bit harder to roster, just significantly more expensive. How are you feeling about either one of these teams in terms of like top stack odds? How do they stand up to you? Top stack tool, by the way, not free today, but Top Pitchers is.
Yeah, I think they look like the way things look right now. I would expect these to be two of the more popular offenses that I get to, because they are both in the top five in terms of top stack percentage. Neither team is getting really over-owned. Their ownership's about where it should be. So right now, like there's a few teams that are getting over-owned because they're really good values. But for the most part, we have ownership pretty much in line with top stack percentage across the board. Like there's nobody at the top right now that really jumps out as being drastically under-owned like you get on some of those slates with like Coors Field, where everyone's going to Coors, so like the next closest team ends up being under-owned. You don't really have that here. So I think Boston and Toronto both look like top stacks to me at the moment.
Do you have a favorite bat in this game?
For value, Jarren Duran batting second. I think for like upside, I really like the price on JD Martinez at 4,800. Of course, Vlad Guerrero is always one of the top plays, but I just think Martinez is a little bit underpriced.
All righty. Anything else you want to touch on for Jays or Red Sox?
Nope.
Keeping it moving, everybody. Tigers and Rangers, coin flip game, 4.7 runs on both sides. Casey Mize, Kyle Gibson. Gibson coming in with 14% ownership on DraftKings, just 8% on FanDuel. No real ownership coming into Mize at 6,600, just 3%. Have you taken another look at Mize, or is your expectation that he's just not going to be out there long enough to be relevant? Right now, Caleb Smith at a comparable price tag, projected for 25% ownership. So there is sort of an outlier in that range.
Yeah, I'm just still not expecting Mize to throw enough pitches to really be a relevant target here. We had, before the All-Star break, we had the Tigers saying that they were going to ease Mize into the All-Star break and then ease him back out of it. If you Google Casey Mize, the first article that comes up is from the Detroit Free Press, and it says that the headline is that they're not going to waiver from his load management, even though they're dealing with some injuries now. So I'm expecting that you get 50 to 60 pitches from Mize here, which just isn't going to give you enough of a ceiling, I don't think.
I think he's worth a flyer, but nothing crazy, just because of some of the major strikeout bats in the Rangers offense. I'd be willing to roll the dice because he's picking up what essentially amounts to no ownership, but I'd have a hard time going pretty heavy to him just because of the factors you just said.
Yeah, but just go to Alec Mills. He's going to throw twice as many pitches.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's a safe bet. What are we doing with Gibson at 14% ownership?
I like the ownership relative to the pitchers around him. Like, I don't really like the price tag all that much on Gibson, only a 21% strikeout percentage. The Tigers having a 4.5 implied run total is kind of scary too, because that's just a relatively high implied run total for that team. But Gibson is just a pretty decent pitcher. He does a good job of limiting power. He's due for some regression in the second half in terms of limiting runs, but it's not in the sense where like he actually hasn't pitched well and he's gotten really lucky. He's pitched well, just not as well as his 2.3 or whatever it is ERA indicates. So I am still interested in Gibson here, especially if the ownership stays where it is. Like, you're getting 31.5% ownership going to Ryan Yarborough at $400 less. I don't think that gap should be that big, basically. So Gibson here against the Tigers is, I think, in a decent spot. I do wish that there were more right-handed bats in the lineup for Detroit. Gibson has struck out 24.5% of righties this year, only about 19% of lefties. You only have 4 righties in this lineup for the Tigers. So was hoping we'd get 1 or 2 extra guys out there. I think that does hurt Gibson a little bit.
I think it's probably time that we need to talk about this now. Yu Darvish projected for 38% ownership. He's $200 more expensive than Kyle Gibson. Probably not going to know anything, but who the hell knows at this point what's going to happen with Yu Darvish's status for today. Does that affect the way that you want to roster Kyle Gibson today?
It probably means that Gibson ends up being higher owned than he's projected right now. Like, my guess is if you do end up kind of taking Darvish away, that you see more ownership go to Gibson, you see more ownership go to Ohtani, Yarborough and Grenky probably get a little bit more as well, and then maybe a little bit goes to Kevin Gausman at 10K. So I mean, I think it probably gets spread out, and I do still like sort of the ratio of the way that the ownership has fallen in those like 4 guys with Grenky, Yarborough, Ohtani, and Gibson. Like, even if Gibson goes from 15 to 20%, if Yarborough is still going to come in at like 35 or 36, I'm still going to be interested in Gibson at 20% ownership or so.
Sure. Just figured, now that we had someone that was in that same sort of range as Darvish, it felt like it was the right time to kind of bring that up and figure out what the trickle down would be. How are you feeling about bats here? Nothing too crazy happening from an ownership perspective. I mean, nobody's rostering the Tigers, but that's not all that surprising. They're not very good. Are you trying to get to either side of this game? Do the Tigers look a little bit better because of the Gibson ownership and potentially impending increased ownership as well?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Like, anytime you, especially in like the larger field tournaments, like the one on DraftKings with 71,000 entrants, anytime you can stack against a good but not great pitcher that's 20+% owned, it's kind of appealing. But I still just don't like it that much. Like, Gibson's so good at limiting power. His expected ISO to righties this year is 0.081. To lefties, it's 143. So, I mean, Akil Baddoo leading off at 3,500, I guess, makes some sense. But outside of that, I don't see a whole lot on the Tigers. I do really, really like left-handed power going up against Casey Mize, though. Joey Gallo in particular, we talked about it a lot this morning. I think it's a great spot for him. Mize hasn't been very good at getting strikeouts this year, 19.7% to lefties. We know Gallo's biggest issue is that he strikes out a lot. Mize has also allowed a 291 expected ISO to left-handed hitters. So I think it sets up really well for Gallo. I like Nate Lowe. I like Jonah Heim batting 5th at 2,300. Even David Dahl at 2,400 batting 7th from the left side. But I think that Lowe, Gallo, Heim mini stack looks really, really good.
Nice. Favorite bat in this game almost has to be Gallo, I would imagine.
Yeah, Joey Gallo, without a doubt.
Yeah, looking really good. 5,500 on DK, just 3,900 on FanDuel. I don't know why I said just. Obviously, a different salary scale on FanDuel in comparison to DK. Anything else you want to touch on here for Tigers Rangers?
Nope. Left-handed.
Well, that's easy. That's left-handed bats. That's easy enough. Schedule for the rest of the day. Easy. Coming up immediately after this, 6 p.m. MLB Live Before Lock. Greg and Eric breaking it all down till 7:05, taking some questions and just giving you guys the goods for a full hour. By the way, 760 people in here, just 68 likes, 10%, not enough. Please hit that thumbs up. You guys are no, it helps us out tremendously. We'd love to get at least north of that 100 marker. That seems like it just needs to happen. And we are doing a little bit of free content for today. As I mentioned before, the MLB Top Pitchers tool is free. And if we just want to give a quick peek behind the curtain, I don't know if Jordan's going to share it or not. He probably does. I can't see him right now. He's probably like nodding at me or something. Yu Darvish currently at the top of the Top Pitchers tool, 26% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, but pulling 39% of the ownership. That is an interesting spot to be given the weather concerns in the Padres Braves game.
And I mean, hopefully, no, I was gonna say, I mean, hopefully we get more information as we approach lock. Like the way that I'm probably going to treat this is if they don't start in a delay, I will probably go ahead and just play Darvish and hope for the best, assuming that they don't start in a delay and there's no like reports of just thunderstorm, rain definitely moving through in like the third or fourth inning. If it's, just the weather is dicey, storms could pop up, but they're not starting in a delay, I'll probably go ahead and roll the dice on Darvish. If they do start in a delay and there's more rain coming, I'll probably back off, especially if it's a situation where it's not raining yet and they start in a delay. That's a spot where I'll probably look to get away from. So, hopefully we'll get a little bit more clarity as we get closer to lock.
As we get to that game, I've got a question or two for you, so I'll hit you with that once we get there. Rays and Orioles. Rays, massive favorites, 5.6 run implied total. Orioles, 3.4. That's the lowest on the slate. 72% chance to win for Tampa. It's Ryan Yarborough. It's Spencer Watkins. Any changes for you on Spencer Watkins? Do we have anything we need to talk about there?
No, still not someone that I expect to be very good. He's like a 28-year-old who just made his major league debut this year. He came from the Tigers, where if you're good, you should have been able to get into the major leagues at some point over the last few years. Now he's with the Orioles, where, again, he's getting an opportunity basically just because the Orioles are so bad. He's been okay in a couple of his starts. He's, been a really popular pitcher to pick on for good reason, but I don't expect that to continue. I still think it's, a very good spot for Tampa Bay.
Is Ryan Yarborough the worst GPP pitching option today?
Kind of, but so I think he's overowned, but I also just don't care that much about pitcher ownership to say that someone's a bad GPP player.
That's fair. I mean, 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. That's more where I'm coming from, in that I feel like there's just enough options in that exact same range that it feels just wildly unnecessary to compete with the rest of the field.
Yeah, I
worst doesn't necessarily mean don't have at all. But to me, that gap is the gap between his current odds of being good and his ownership seem way out of whack.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's overowned. My guess, I haven't made lineups yet, but my guess is that in 150 max, I end up being underweight on Yarborough and then maybe getting overweight on the rest of the guys in that group, or getting out of that group entirely. But I still think if you're stacking a low-owned team, Yarborough is still a perfectly fine play because he's one of the top projected pitchers.
Yeah, I see, someone like Stripling getting no ownership, and I just immediately want to make that pivot a little bit more. I just see that gap being too big. Clearly looks good, and when you get a matchup again, when your opponent has the lowest implied total, you're kind of going to look good by default. I have no choice but to be interested in top of the Orioles lineup, though.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Also, no Cedric Mullins in the lineup, which on the one hand is not great for Yarborough because he has struck out 27.5% of lefties this year compared to 17.8% of righties. There's not a single lefty in this lineup. So that's not great. But also, when you're replacing Cedric Mullins with someone like Pat Vallejo or Ryan McKenna, I'm not really sure how much that actually hurts Yarborough because you're just getting some guys that cannot hit. But yeah, Austin Hayes, Trey Mancini, Ryan Mountcastle, Anthony Santander. I like getting to those guys in tournaments. It still really sucks that DraftKings has Mancini and Mountcastle both as first basemen because you can't play them together. You can on FanDuel, obviously, but using 3 of those 4 guys in a mini stack or even just one-offing some of them, I think, is a pretty good approach in tournaments because of Yarborough's ownership.
Are you targeting Rays bats against Watkins?
I think a lot ends up coming down to ownership. Tampa Bay right now projected to be a little bit overowned on DraftKings, 6.5% chance to be in the top stack, almost 10% aggregate ownership. I do think it's a good spot. I really like the price tag on Brandon Lau leading off at 4,500 on DraftKings. Austin Meadows at 4,600 is a good salary as well. So far this season, Watkins has, a very small sample in the majors. He's only thrown 59 pitches to lefties, 121 to righties. So can't read too much into that. But again, I just don't expect him to be very good. So I would like to get to Tampa, but I also would like their ownership to come down a bit.
Yeah, Lau looking like a pretty likely cash play, just given his ownership and the way that he grades out for me, plus hitting leadoff, it all sort of stands out to, in my eyes. Just don't see the Rays as a team that I would be very likely to be stacking up aggressively, which is kind of surprising, but price tags are just sort of high-ish, and that's really all it takes to make it a little bit harder.
Yeah, like the way it looks right now, I just think I get to more Toronto and more Boston.
Okay, that makes sense. God, Baltimore's going to break the slate today. You heard it here first. You would love it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, man, Ramon Urias is batting 5th. I already rostered the guy too much.
Well, it's not going to take much to get over the field with his crisp not owned, along with the rest of the team not owned. So you'll be all right there.
It's not even, and to be clear, it's not that I rostered him because I think he's like good or something. I just, he always ends up in my Orioles stacks because he's so cheap. But Steamer actually projects him to be like an above average hitter or an average hitter. 100
I was going to say, on my last update, I have him on 100 on the dot. So
yeah.
Any final thoughts for Rays Orioles?
No, I just like going to the Orioles power against Yarborough and hoping to, knock off some of the field.
Reds and Mets, 5.6 run implied total for the Reds, 5.4 for the Mets. Basically a coin flip game. Vladimir Gutierrez going for Cincinnati, Jared Eichhoff going for the Mets. Neither guy picking up any ownership. Not all that surprising given this total. Are you looking at pitching here?
No, I'm not. Tough park to pitch in Cincinnati. Eichhoff hasn't. We don't have much of a sample of Eichhoff this season, but what we have seen hasn't really looked good. I don't think a 5K pitcher is all that necessary today. Gutierrez not striking guys out, is giving up power. I just don't really see it for other pitchers.
Bats, on the other hand, very different. We have the Mets as the top stack of the day and properly owned. We have Cincinnati tied for the second spot, maybe coming in a little over-owned, but they're also such good values that I think that it's probably spot on. They are sort of the perfect combination of upside and price for today. What do you want to do with bats, given that information, given what we know?
I really like the Mets because the ownership is a little bit lower. It's not that I even think the Mets are like overpriced. It's just that they don't jump out as glaring values quite the way that the Reds do. So I think you'll see just more ownership going to the Reds. But Vladimir Gutierrez this year has only struck out 16.5% of hitters. He's walked 10%. He's allowed 1.43 home runs per 9, 200 expected ISO to righties, 164 to lefties. I think Pete Alonso looks really good here. I think Brandon Nimmo leading off is in a pretty good spot. McNeil and Smith are fine. Conforto's cheap. The one guy that I'd single out not to sleep on if you are going to the Mets is J.D. Davis, batting 5th at 4,800. He's like the one name on this team out of the top 6 hitters that kind of looks overpriced, that I could see people kind of just leaving him off. He's only projected for about 3.5% ownership. But this is someone that since the start of the 2019 season, in 489 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, he has a 200 ISO and a 376 WOBA. I mean, the guy can hit, the guy has power, and Gutierrez doesn't miss a lot of bats. So I do think JD Davis gives you quite a bit of upside at low ownership in the middle of this lineup.
I would definitely like JD Martinez for the Mets if you were playing there as a $4,800 third baseman, but that's neither here nor there. How do we manage this heavy ownership from the Reds, though? We've got Jesse Winker at 26%, very warranted as far as I'm concerned. Top 6 guys in the lineup, all at 12% or higher. We know that they're cheap enough that they're pretty easy to get to. Does that concern you at all? Do they become an optimizer stack that you sort of try to get away from, maybe try to get to a little bit more Pittsburgh, who's a fantastic value? Is that a spot where you try to get to a little bit more Baltimore, who's also a pretty high-end value, not really a great opportunity to get a top stack, but it seems like Pittsburgh would be the natural Cincinnati pivot.
Yeah, I think that and Baltimore, like you said. The way that it seems like I typically end up approaching teams like this where, Cincinnati is tied with Toronto and San Diego for the second highest top stack percentage on the slate. And they are projected to be over-owned, but it's also not like you're getting, massive ownership going to them. What normally ends up happening is in lineups where I'm contrarian a pitcher, like lineups where I have Alec Mills and I don't know, Stripling or something. Or if I'm stacking a really, really low-owned team, I don't mind mixing in Cincinnati because I do think that they're very, very good values. Like Jesse Winker's a very good hitter in a good spot. He's only 4,200. Tyler Naquin's batting 5th at 2,500. Tyler Stevenson at 3,600 batting 3rd has plenty of power for a catcher. So I do actually like those plays. It's just a matter of you need to be getting them into lineups that are otherwise contrarian. I would be surprised if I have a lot of full Cincinnati stacks because I just don't see a lot of ways to go where I'm getting any sort of leverage on the field.
Winker, I assume, favorite bat in this game?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd be hard-pressed to find Jesse Winker not in the cash lineup as well. Just the makeup of all of this looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Winker isn't in most cash lineups. I could see Naquin being in there as well, although I'm just not sure how necessary a $2,500 hitter is. But I think he's one of the top values in terms of point per dollar.
Anything else? Reds, Mets?
No, like the offenses. Prefer the Mets a little bit right now just because of the ownership.
Braves, Padres, 4-run implied total for the Braves, 5-run implied total for the Padres. It's Kyle Muller and Yu Darvish. And we know that we've got some seriously legitimate weather concerns coming in here for this game. We know how high Yu Darvish's ownership is currently. On our top pitchers tool, it is coming in blank because it logged me out, or blank because it's literally just getting updated right now, and I timed that perfectly. Probably the timing thing. Coming in at 39% ownership. We have him at as the top pitcher 26% of the time. So basically, 3/4 of the time, he's not one of the top 2 scoring pitchers here. Is there a case to be made to just fully ignore him today?
So I gave my thoughts on the weather earlier because I thought we were going to that game. But
yeah.
If the weather cooperates, I don't really think so. Like, again, it's just he's one of the highest upside pitchers on the slate. The price tag's reasonable. The Braves don't have Acuna, which makes their offense obviously weaker. I think that he's probably overowned at 40%. But again, it's just I care more about getting low owned bats in general and low owned stacks because they take up half my lineup than I do just avoiding popular pitchers when I think that they're one of the highest upside plays on the slate. So not saying that I'm necessarily jamming over the top on Darvish, over the top of his 40% if the weather cooperates, but the ownership isn't a huge concern to me.
My only thought here is that, and maybe I'm just crazy, 26% for as a top 2 pitcher just didn't feel high enough. Like I was surprised to not see it be higher. And now that it's not, with ambiguity for the weather, I almost feel like I'm just better off Xing him out, hoping that I get one of the other guys in that price range correct. And 38.7% of lineups are dead in the water.
I just don't know why you would need to do that. Like if you're playing 150 lineups, just make some Brave stacks. Like be overweight on the Braves. And the thing is too,
sure.
I don't think there's that many comparable options to Darvish.
Well, the reason to not be heavy on the Braves is the game doesn't happen.
Wait, what?
Well, the reason to not be heavy on the Braves as well is the weather concerns.
Well, I thought we were just assuming the weather cooperates. Like he's not going to be 40% owned if it's raining.
I mean, it's by all accounts, it's raining.
Okay, so like for example, like
I think we're less likely to see this game than to not see it.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that, but I'm saying like, he's not going to be 40% owned if it rains. Like it's just not. It's going to come down. Like Garrett Cole was projected for 43% ownership the other day. The Yankees went into a rain delay 2 minutes before lock, and he ended up being 16% owned.
Okay, so yeah, obviously that's way different. If Yu Darvish drops from 38 to 25, then everything that I'm saying is irrelevant. I'm sort of just using that 38% as if this is the case, I'd probably not want to be there.
Yeah, and like I'm still just fine with it because like the other thing is outside, like obviously Darvish can get blown up and just not score fantasy points, but there's not a lot of alternatives on the slate that give you the same strikeout upside. Like,
sure,
I kind of feel like the Kyle Gibson, Ryan Yarborough, Zach Grenky range, these guys that are priced around Darvish, they're priced up because of the lack of pitching on the slate, whereas Darvish is kind of just coming in where he normally does. Darvish has a 30% strikeout percentage this year. Gibson's at 21%. Yarborough's at 19%. Grenky's at 18.5%. If you assume all of these guys just have normal games, for lack of a better word, like Darvish just has the potential to do so much better because of the strikeout. Yeah. So, I think, again, I'm going to have enough low owned stacks most likely where I'd still be getting to Darvish.
Okay. Well, you mentioned what to do if you aren't a huge fan of Darvish, and that would be roster the Braves. How confident are you in that? Freeman, Albies, Swanson, Riley, all pretty expensive. They don't grade out particularly well. No one owns them, but you can be on the opposite side of something pretty good if it goes tits up for you, Darvish. Are you looking to get to Atlanta?
Yeah, I think they are a team that will kind of move up for me, especially in larger field tournaments. Like I'd be kind of surprised if I get to Atlanta in like the $500 on DraftKings, but in the $5, I wouldn't be surprised at all because, I mentioned on a lot of shows, it's kind of like the things that tend to move stacks up the board for me are just, high chance of success, being underowned, or facing a popular pitcher. They're facing the most popular pitcher on the slate using, right now's ownership projections. They are projected to be underowned. They're a low probability stack, but their ownership is even lower than their chance of success. So I think they would move up and look pretty good for me. And, 1 through 5, it's still solid hitters here. Like, you're paying a premium on some of them. They're definitely overpriced. But Jock Peterson, Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, it's not like you're stacking one of these teams that has no upside and you're like, oh, I hope that all of these guys get like 3 hits because I know they're not going to hit home runs. Like, there is power here. There is stolen base upside here. Darvish has been pretty good at limiting power this year, but over the last few years, he certainly had his share of home run issues as well. And so I think the Braves are still, even without Acuna, a high enough upside spot against a 40% owned pitcher. I'm definitely interested, especially in those larger tournaments.
What about Padres bats? Obviously, Tatis pulling a ton of ownership for no surprise whatsoever. Rest of the lineup, nothing crazy. Nobody into double digits. Do you like a Padres stack?
If the weather cooperates, sure. I mean, Kyle Muller has been good in his brief time in the majors. Strikeout stuff's been there. He's just been a pretty solid pitcher. But the Padres just have such a dangerous lineup. They still have a 5-run implied total. Tatis at 6K would still be one of the top shortstop plays. Pham offers some value. Myers is back in the lineup batting 6th, and he's pretty cheap. So I do have interest in the Padres if the weather cooperates here.
Gut feeling. Do you have one? What do we think? What do you think we see here? Or have you just not looked into it enough?
You're talking about weather?
Yeah.
My gut feeling is that the weather doesn't cooperate.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, we've got a lot of time before lock here. You're not making any rash decisions at 5:30. There's no reason to do so.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts in Braves pods?
I'll just throw it out there. If somehow the range just disappears and it's not a concern for pitching, Kyle Muller does give you a ceiling at 7,600. It's not a high probability play. The matchup sucks, but he did have about a 31% strikeout percentage at AAA. It's up over 30% so far in the majors, and he's getting 3% ownership. So he's just another guy that, if you're playing large field tournaments and willing to take on some risk, there is definitely reward in the range of outcomes for Muller.
If you're playing large field tournaments today and you want to get access to a little bit of extra information, use the promo code MLB Deeper Dive. Get yourself 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. Projections, ownership, top stacks, top pitchers, premium slack, and tons more. But you get it for every single sport. Just because the promo code says MLB Deeper Dive doesn't mean it's just baseball. You get access to everything. It's up on the screen right now. MLB Deeper Dive, one big word, gets you in the door for 25% off of every piece of content we have. It's not just baseball. You get access to all of it. MMA for the weekends. We have tennis projections. Obviously, baseball is going to be pretty easy for you to get to, and you're probably looking for it given the fact that you're listening to this show right now. PGA every week, NASCAR every week, esports. We have so much DFS content for you. You don't want to miss it. Use that promo code to sign up. We're moving on now to the Houston Astros and the Cleveland Indians. 5.3 run implied total for the Astros, 3.7 for the Indians. Zach Grenky, JC Mejia. What are we doing with Grenky here at 22% ownership, 8,800?
He's like the same to me as Yarborough and Gibson. Like, I don't like the price point because he doesn't give you much in the way of strikeout upside. You're hoping that he's efficient and gets 7 innings or so against Cleveland, but he only has an 18.5% strikeout percentage. Not typically what I'm willing to pay $8,800 for, but you kind of have to take what's given on this slate. So I'll expect that I'm probably somewhere around the field on Grenky. It is a decent matchup against Cleveland. And again, there's just not a whole lot of pitching to like on this slate.
The question is, do you attack any Cleveland bats because of the Grenky ownership or just in general? I mean, Ramirez, Reyes, Brantley, all fantastic hitters in their own right, or at least fantastic power hitters in their own right. Yeah,
I mean, it's not a spot that I'm like really confident in because Grenky has still been pretty good at limiting production. Left-handed hitters this year only have a 104 expected ISO. Righties are at 183. But because of the ownership going to Grenky, I definitely don't have any issues with mixing in some combination of Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, and Bobby Bradley. Just all guys that are capable of doing a lot of damage and can get you a little bit of leverage against a popular pitcher.
Yeah, don't roster Jose Reyes today. I promise you that one's not going to work out for you. Now, on the opposite side here, Astros bats. Not really a ton of ownership coming in here, but to me, I'd be interested in grabbing at least a little piece of this game at a 5.3 run implied total.
Yeah, I wish that the Astros had more left-handed hitters, but they do have three pretty good ones in the top six, which is nice. Mejia's been night and day different so far against righties compared to lefties. He has a 28% strikeout percentage against righties. He's allowed a sub 100 expected ISO. Against lefties, he only has a 16.7% strikeout percentage. His expected ISO allowed is 199. So clearly someone that you're going to prefer left-handed hitters against. So that kind of pushes up Brantley, Alvarez, and Tucker. But then Altuve, Correa, to a lesser extent, Gurriel, are still dangerous enough hitters that I certainly wouldn't be excluding them from Astros stacks. But individually, I really like Alvarez. I really like Tucker. And I think Brantley looks like a pretty good value.
Yeah, I think Brantley's grading out as my best per dollar play for the Astros. Not that that's any sort of surprise. 3,500 hitting in the 2-hole makes it pretty easy. Anything else here, Astros or the Cleveland side of this game? Anything we really need to look at?
No, I think that's about it. Hold your nose and play some Zach Grenky. If you're looking to take guys against him, just look to the middle of the order on Cleveland, and then lefties in particular for the Astros. But overall, just a good stack here against Mejia, I think.
Just shy of 800 concurrent viewers. We're at 156 likes. We can bump that ratio up a little bit. Time to ask for 200. We need 44 more. Hit that thumbs up if you want to support us. It would help us out a ton. Cardinals and Cubs, basically a coin flip game, 9-run implied total. Jake Woodford and your boy, Alec Mills. Go ahead. Tell everybody why they should roster Alec Mills today.
Because he's not any worse than the $8,800 pitchers that everyone is rostering, and he costs $2,000 less. The matchup isn't great, but it's not terrible either. I don't think it's just kind of like a mediocre matchup, I think. But the thing with Mills is that he's been good all season long, but he hasn't really been a DFS relevant option because he's been limited for most of the season in terms of pitch count. His last two starts, though, 92 pitches against the Reds, 95 pitches against Philly. If he's going to start throwing 90 to 100 pitches now, he's going to have to be priced more than $6,700. It's just too cheap of a price point. You already mentioned earlier in the show that Caleb Smith's picking up about 25% ownership at $6,600. I think Smith's fine, and we'll talk about him when we get to that game. But I don't think he's drastically better than Alec Mills, who right now is getting 5% ownership. So I'm interested in Mills. He comes in with a 21.2% strikeout percentage, which again, it's not very high, but it's just shy of Kyle Gibson. It's higher than Yarborough. It's higher than Grenky, and he's less expensive than all of those guys. He's only walked 5% of hitters. He has a 3.13 xFIP, 0.63 home runs per 9 allowed. At 6,700, I just don't think there's that much risk in going to Alec Mills at low ownership.
Well, I'll definitely say this much. I don't think that there's much risk going to Alec Mills. That I agree with. I would not be going to Alec Mills, but you are all over this one way more than I am. So I have no dog in this fight.
Yeah, I'll be sure to message you when he has 25 fantasy points.
I know that will absolutely happen. So I'll make sure to screenshot that and let everybody know that'll happen. Now, bats, on the other hand, we've got Wilson Contreras at 10% ownership. No surprise there. Catcher hitting leadoff is going to pull at least a little bit of ownership no matter what, especially when you're an actively good hitting catcher. After that, it's kind of thin. A little bit of ownership at the top of the Cubs lineup. No ownership at all coming to the Cardinals. Do you think there should be more bats getting owned here?
Not really. Obviously, I don't like the spot for the Cardinals against Mills. On the other side, it's basically a bullpen game here. You're probably going to get a couple innings out of Woodford, and then you'll get relievers from the Cardinals, which just typically isn't the best thing for offenses. So, I think that the Cubs are fine just because Contreras is good, Rizzo, Baez, Bryant, these guys all have power. Patrick Wisdom's in the lineup. He also has power. Hayward offers some value batting fifth, but they just don't really stand out to me as one of my favorite spots to go to. Middling, 4.6 implied run total, not great. And again, it's just, I don't like attacking bullpens all that much.
Yeah. It's one of the weird things that happens nowadays where you're getting so many more arms for such little amounts of time, and everybody throws 98 now. It's really not advantageous to be catching 5 straight relievers throwing gas.
Yeah, if we were doing the show in 1998 against those bullpens, it would just be oh man, I can't wait to take hitters against these relievers because today those guys probably couldn't even pitch in Double-A.
No, it's a very, very different game. That's for sure. Favorite bat in this game?
I like the salary on Rizzo at 3,700.
Yeah. I like Contreras quite a bit in that leadoff spot. I mean, that Contreras Rizzo Baez stack, I'm more than okay getting to it as like a 3-man. Not that it's super crazy to say that, but you know, at 10% ownership across all three, like it seems about right. Rizzo probably the guy that is actually under owned, but at the same time, again, like first basemen are pretty easy to find on this slate. I don't see much on the Cardinals side that I like.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak team. I mean, it's like the whole roster is the same outside of Goldschmidt. The weighted runs created plus on all these guys are all just like mid 90s to like just over 100. It's just the same guy over and over and over again. I don't know. Anything else? Cardinals and Cubs?
No. Play some Alec Mills in tournaments.
Now would be the time, everybody, to talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of the show, and that would be Jock Market. Very different than what we're normally talking about, because this is not just like a contest you're entering. We're turning players into a stock exchange. So whether that's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, you're buying and selling players as shares of stocks, which is really interesting. And you can continue to do it while the game is going on. Now, that's the best part. You could just be sitting there, you're watching a basketball game, Giannis picks up 2 fouls, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to sell my shares of Giannis now, and I'm going to pick up shares of Bobby Portis because he's going to pick up a couple extra minutes. You can do that all from the comfortable spot on your couch. Use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up. You're going to need to go to the App Store, download that app. You get a $50 bonus on your first deposit. This offer only exists for the Awesemo community. You got to make sure you're taking advantage of it. Again, Awesemo is the promo code, and you get a $50 bonus. I love this mechanism for Jock Market. I think it's a really fun way to play a fantasy sports game. To me, it's really interesting to be actively buying and selling shares throughout a game. I think you guys should really check it out. Again, it's Jock Market. Make sure you're searching the App Store for the app right now and using that promo code. Adam, we've got 3 games to go before we kick this one over to the Live Before Lock crew. It is now time to talk Diamondbacks and Pirates. Very, very fun to talk about, as I misspell Diamondbacks as I type it into my sheet. 4.9 run implied total for the D-backs, 4.6 for the Pirates. Caleb Smith, Chase DeYoung. Let's talk a little bit about Caleb Smith being in a quarter of the lineups today. Feels a tad high.
Kind of, but it's also not a bad matchup against Pittsburgh, and he has a higher strikeout percentage than like every other pitcher that people are rostering. I mean, excluding the guys at the top like Darvish, Gausman, and Ohtani, but like that $8,800 group, the Yarborough, Grenky, Gibson, like Smith's got a 24% strikeout percentage, which is higher than all of those guys. The problem is he gives up home runs and he walks 13% of hitters as well. He's not a very good pitcher, so that's why he's as cheap as he is. But on a slate like this, where there's a lot of popular pitching that is just very, very mediocre, I'm just interested in the strikeout numbers that Smith can give you. The ownership, I think, is too high relative to Alec Mills, however, which is why I expect to be getting overweight on Mills and maybe underweight on Smith. But I do think it's a high upside spot for Smith. It's also a very low floor because of the fact that he gives up a lot of power and also walks a lot of guys. It's pretty easy for Caleb Smith to just have a short night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, ownership just feels a little high. Definitely makes sense why he's the guy in that area picking up the ownership. Concerns me a little bit. 25 isn't too crazy. 10% on FanDuel as well feels even a little bit crazier, but just $7K there. Are you interested in attacking Pirates bats against that Caleb Smith ownership? Brian Hayes already at 20% ownership. Reynolds is at 14. Jacob Stallings is in double digit at 11%. What do we want to do with Pirates bats against the Caleb Smith ownership?
Yeah, I mean, they offer value here, and they also offer, leverage against Smith, because if the Pirates do well, that's a quarter of the field that is not doing well with Caleb Smith. I don't love the ownership here because, I mean, this is a lineup that's not very good, but I think that's offset at least a little bit by the fact that Smith is also getting ownership. So I would expect that I get around the field on the Pirates. I like Hayes. I like Reynolds. You have John Legowski hitting 4th at 2,300. Stallings, a catcher option, hitting 6th. I mean, Ben Gamble, lefty, but 2K flat at, hitting 5th. Kevin Newman's 2,300 leading off. Just an incredibly cheap team going up against a pitcher who is very capable of just getting blown up. So I don't feel confident in terms of like, I don't like rostering the Pirates bats. I almost never do. I think they're one of the worst offenses in baseball, but Caleb Smith isn't a very good pitcher. And outside of the strikeouts, there's not really anything he does well.
Are you interested in attacking some of these Diamondbacks bats against Chase DeYoung? Cole Calhoun unquestionably is going to be, I would imagine, in most cash lineups, flat minimum 2K, hitting second, 28% ownership, and then just a relatively normal 10-ish% at the top of the order. Are you going to the D-backs?
Yeah, I like the spot here against DeYoung. And this is an example of a team, and you alluded to it, where you do want to look a little bit further than just top stack percentage ownership, like the aggregate ownership there, because Cole Calhoun's driving that number up so much. If you look at the top stack tool, it looks like the Diamondbacks are drastically overowned, but they're really not getting a whole lot of ownership outside of Calhoun at 20%. You have Rojas at 11, Escobar at 9, Walker at 8. Those are, definitely numbers you can work with. And Calhoun, on the one hand, like anytime a pitcher or a hitter rather, is going to be 20 to 30% owned, you can always make a case for going somewhere else. But at 2K, it's just an absolute mispricing for Calhoun against a pitcher in DeYoung who has not been very good and has given up plenty of power. So I do like the Diamondbacks here. I think that the rest of the team is low enough owned that it works out in tournaments, especially if you just make, this is a team where maybe you make a contrarian player to a pitcher just to, be a little bit different. But DeYoung this season, 211 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 296, there's 298 rather to righties. So, in addition to liking Calhoun, I actually really like Christian Walker at 3K. I like Escobar, but Walker as a one-off, I think is a really good play too.
Who's your favorite bat in this game?
Cole Calhoun.
That isn't Cole Calhoun.
Christian Walker.
Okay. It's a weird one. Probably Hayes for me. I feel like a lot of guys just look similar here. Yeah, it would probably be Hayes. Deez Dong says Arizona has one of the worst leverage scores. Deez Dongs must not have had the audio on for that one. We'll skip how that got fully explained. Who would want to know that kind of stuff? Anything else here for Diamondbacks or Pirates?
I guess just one other thing to mention with the Pirates, and I don't really know that it's actionable. Like I don't love them as one-offs as much as I like the Diamondbacks. Like if you're hand building a lineup, I think that the Diamondbacks make for better one-offs because Chase DeYoung gives up a lot of power. Caleb Smith walks so many guys that I don't like the idea of taking one-offs as much because like you're just going to get a lot of guys getting 2, 4, 6 points. Whereas if Caleb Smith's really bad, then you're going to want all the Pirates. So right. If you're hand building and just looking at one-offs, I definitely prefer power from the Diamondbacks over going to the Pirates.
2 games left to go, just shy of those 200 likes. And then we are turning this one over to the live before lock crew. Oakland A's, the Angels, 4.1 run implied total for the A's, 4 for the Angels. Not ideal. Cole Irvin, Shohei Ohtani. Irvin pulling up 5% ownership right now. Ohtani at 19% on DraftKings at 8,700. Let's start there. What do you want to do with Ohtani today?
I expect that I'll be overweight on Ohtani just because of the strikeout upside. He's in that same grouping with Yarborough, Grenky, Gibson, and Ohtani, with the exception of Mueller in his 4 starts. Ohtani has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate this year at 30.7%. He's far from safe. He's got a 12.5% walk percentage. He is capable of, putting a lot of guys on base, wasting a lot of pitches. But I just think the ceiling for him is a lot higher than it is for those other guys. So I like getting to Ohtani, especially because, right now the ownership isn't really there. He's getting a little bit less than Gibson, but he's getting a lot less than Yarborough, a little bit less than Grenky. So with the ownership the way it looks right now, I do like getting to Ohtani, even though it's scary and the A's aren't a bad offense. I just think that if you're going to price up the Grenky Yarborough group because of the slate, you needed to make Ohtani like 9,500 or something.
Let's just say Yu Darvish gets ruled out at 655. Do we see a gigantic jump in Ohtani's ownership, or does he maintain and it sort of fills in around him?
I kind of think that you just see that entire group increase, probably like just in the same proportions that you're getting now. So, maybe he goes from like 16 to 20 or 22 or something. Okay.
Angels bats doesn't look like a very good lineup to me.
It does not. I do like Brandon Marsh hitting 5th at 2K. Gausman also at 2,100 is fine. Marsh, one of the top prospects for the Angels, making his major league debut tonight. So I think that's a perfectly fine value. Like if you were looking for a lower owned 2K guy than Cole Calhoun, I don't think Marsh is in as good a spot. I don't think he's as good, but it certainly can work. You know, he can hit, he can run. So I have some interest there. But as far as full stacks go, not really looking to the Angels too much. Not being able to roster Ohtani just takes so much of the appeal away from stacking the Angels.
Is it surprising to you that that is how it works?
What do you mean?
Not being able to roster Ohtani on days that he pitches as a hitter?
No, because you don't get to roster National League pitchers either. I mean, you don't get their hitting points.
But I would be. Do you think that he should exist in two separate ways? Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, Shohei Ohtani, the hitter.
Oh, I see. So I mean, DraftKings have said that it's like an absolute back end nightmare to do that, but ideally, yeah.
Yeah, that confuses me on how that could possibly be the case, but I trust them, I guess. Maybe that nightmare means they have to do like 4 hours worth of work and they don't want to,
yeah.
But I can't imagine it's as complicated as it seems, but what do I know? On the Oakland side, on the opposite side of Ohtani, no one is pulling any ownership. The question for you is, should they be?
I don't really think so. Like you can always make the case for Oakland just because they do have a lot of power in the lineup, but they have one of the lowest top stack percentages on the slate at 2.2%. Ohtani right now isn't getting that much ownership, so I don't really want to go like that far down the board to stack against them. Kind of like I don't want to go that far down the board to go to Cleveland against Grenky unless his ownership increases outside of getting to, like the main guys on Cleveland that we mentioned. It's kind of the same thing here. Like if you get to some Matt Olson, you get to some Jed Lowry, I think that's fine, but they're not cheap. They're not in a good hitter's park. It's supposed to be like 60 degrees in Oakland as well. I just don't have a whole lot of interest.
EMAC coming in with the answer here. Fantasy draft used to have Ohtani pitcher and Ohtani hitter. So if they can do it and DK can't.
I'm surprised that's the case because typically they just copied everything that DraftKings did,
including their salaries.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else here for A's Angels. You ready to close this out with Dodgers Giants?
Yep.
As I said, Dodgers Giants, 4.2 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.8 for the Giants. Tony Gonsolin, Kevin Gausman, 18% ownership coming in for Gausman, 8% on Gonsolin. How do you feel about the pitching in this one?
Gausman getting 10% now. He has a 18% top two pitcher score.
Damn. That has changed dramatically since I last pulled ownership. Let me pull the updated ownership.
At 10%, I'm interested in Gausman here. We probably won't have the Dodgers lineup before lock, but if Mookie Betts is out, obviously that's a nice upgrade for Gausman as well. But either way, it's going to be a dangerous lineup. There's certainly risk here, but on a slate where, again, like I keep coming back to it, there's so much ownership going to just mediocre pitching at not really cheap salaries, but you can go to Gausman in a tough matchup with a 30.5% strikeout percentage. I mean, the guy's been a legitimate ace this season. I like getting there as long as the ownership stays low. If like the Padres game would get canceled and we expect a ton of the Darvish ownership to go to Gausman, I'd be less inclined to be taking the pitcher at high ownership against the Dodgers. But if he's going to be 10 to 15% owned, I'm definitely interested in going to Gausman here.
Yeah, that ownership dropping is really surprising to me. I would happily get there now that he's 10% owned. To me, he looks like a downright solid play because of that ownership. So what about the opposite side? How are you feeling about Gonsolin at 8,200?
I just don't think he throws enough pitches for me to want to pay that salary. I think he's a good pitcher. But the concern is if he's going to throw 70, 75 pitches at 8,200, it's kind of hard for him to put up a score that you really need. It's as much as I dislike the general crop of pitchers in that price range, they're still just going to throw more pitches, and it's going to be hard for Gonsolin to beat them. He threw 83 pitches against Arizona on the 11th in 4 innings. The start before that, he threw 72 pitches in 5 1/3. He's a good pitcher, and if he somehow threw 90 to 100 pitches here, I think he would do well, but we just haven't seen that happen. So I'm not too excited about getting there.
Are you excited to get to Dodgers or Giants bats? Because they do not grade out well for me.
No, I think both pitchers are obviously good. If I were to go to one side, I would go to the Dodgers just because they're such a powerful offense. They have so much upside, even though the matchup's really tough. They're just a really high upside team. But there's also enough good offenses, good spots to go to on the slate that I like. That don't anticipate getting to a lot of Dodgers here against possibly the most talented pitcher on the slate.
Anything else? Dodgers or Giants?
No, obviously, if you're playing, multiple lineups and you're getting to the Dodgers, obviously keep an eye out, be ready to late swap because Mookie Betts may or may not play.
So DK has the pretty sizable $100K to first $5 entry fee GPP today. I believe has already filled 71,000 or something like that entries. Who are your favorite stacks for that specific tournament?
Yeah, so I haven't built lineups for it yet, so this might what I say might not be what ends up happening in practice because I automate all of my stuff and I'm not going to go through and adjust it. But knowing how everything works on my end, I would expect with the way data looks right now, I would expect to be getting to Toronto and Boston. I would expect to be getting I'd expect to be getting to Houston and then possibly getting to Baltimore because of Yarborough's ownership.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on for this slate in general?
I think it's just okay. So we just did another ownership update. Gausman's at 20% now. Darvish is down to 20%. Yarborough's up to 35. Ohtani's up to 25. So it's kind of what we had said. You just saw ownership on all those guys increase. But yeah, I think it's a slate where you really shouldn't be afraid to be contrarian because there's a lot of good spots on the slate, but there's no Coors game. There's no team with a 7.5 implied run total like we've seen from the Blue Jays in some spots recently. You're always going to get concentrated ownership on certain guys on any slate just because of how people make their lineups. They use projections. They rely on projections too heavily and don't do anything to differentiate. So you're always going to get some concentrated ownership. But on a slate like this, it's going to guys that just aren't that good. Offenses that aren't that good, pitchers that aren't that good, just because that's what's available. So I think that on some slates, it's really, really scary to be contrarian, and you kind of have to weigh if it's worth it because some spots are so good. To me, this is not one of those slates. I will be pretty disappointed if I end up playing a high percentage of popular plays, especially stacks, because I think the slate's just pretty wide open. There's a lot of things that are very, very, very similar.
There you have it, everybody. Don't go anywhere. Live Before Lock is coming up right now on this stream. You don't have to move. Just stay right here and hit that like button in the interim. Let's run that number up. Let's get it nice and high before Greg and Eric hop on. For Adam, I'm Josh. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll talk to you all again sometime tomorrow.
It's so hard. It is the Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock show. Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist, and Jordan Klein behind the glass with the yellowest shirt that I've ever seen. He's thrilled to be here. It looks like he got to get tan this weekend. Everything good. Everything good here. And Eric, what do you make of Jordan's shirt here? And did you also feel like me? Jordan, by the way, very upset that we're talking about him right now. He's hiding behind the camera. Did you, like me, feel that he was maybe a little bit downtrodden as we were warming up for the show?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan of whatever was happening. He was like, oh, shucks, gosh darn it. Today is just so hard, and I don't want to be here. And now we're back. He was wearing this shirt yesterday, though, so I'm going to call him out. The man apparently did not shower. He just went down to the beach, bummed it, didn't do anything with his life, and then, produced shows today. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain that he's never seen a shower in his entire life. He probably doesn't even have running water at that new apartment of his. It's very nice,
though. He's too sad to shower. It's hard out there.
Yeah, listen, he's got a tough job, Jordan. He's got to sit there. He's got to watch. I mean, God forbid Jordan watches 2 baseball shows in a row. Just the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody in the history of the world. But good preamble there. Just enough time for me to get my lineups updated with some of the latest ownership updates. But jumping into the pitchers, Eric, that's where we're going to start here, because that's, usually where we start on the MLB Live Before Lock show. Now, pitchers have been so difficult to nail down over the last, 6 weeks or so, ever since there was the change in foreign pitcher substances. I'm sure that people are, tired of hearing about it, but it's become, something that's really impacted a lot of slates, and it's created a lot of variance. So first thing I'm going to start is at the top end with the chalkiest pitcher on the slate, coming off an awful outing against the Washington Nationals. How are you handling Yu Darvish today, who appears a little bit underpriced, is going to be super popular, but we have to be a little bit concerned after what we saw from his last time out?
Yeah, I was very concerned about what we saw last time out. They ended up, I think they said left hip inflammation. And I think that all goes in left hip inflammation. Like it's absolutely in quotes, because they just basically put him on the IL. He was terrible. Something was off with him. It wasn't great. I don't think that game plays, though. So, I mean, I don't want to get into like the weather narrative of it, but are you going to keep him in your pool here? Have you looked a little bit at this ATL weather? We've got Loco there in the chat, keeping us informed, always does. But I have no idea whether or not I'm assuming this game is just not going to be a go from what I'm hearing.
Well, it would have helped if every Google Chrome didn't just crash on me and every page I was looking at closed down. So going to have to restart that. But could you repeat that? Because I have to bring up all my
you're okay.
Again.
No, the weather is just completely garbage right there. I can't believe. It just looks. I don't think that this game is going to end up playing tonight. More than likely, I think that's now reflected in our ownership. It's Yu Darvish was around 45% earlier in the day. Now he's down to 20%. You're seeing a guy like Kyle Muller, who went from like around 6-7%. Now he's 0.5%. I think that's just everybody pumping the brakes on this entire game. I'm normally somebody who wants to inherit that risk, but just what it looks like in Atlanta. I mean, we have people in the chat, whether or not I don't want to go to the chat, but Loco is the verified source for me. He's got some major weather concerns for this game. I think I have to as well. I think I would probably be half the field if it were like 45% Darvish. I'd be at the field. If we end up getting news that this game is going to be good to go and, it's 10 minutes before a lock, maybe I'll put Darvish back into my pool, but I don't really otherwise feel like this is a game I want to mess with too much.
Yeah, it's definitely risky. So now I have all my pages pulled up, and I'm actually able to listen to you and have a back and forth because I'm not panicking because the show hasn't started and just everything crashes. It's like, oh great, now I'm looking at nothing on my computer screen. It's just everybody's looking at me and my sunburned face right now. But listen, so the weather report right now in that game in Atlanta, it doesn't look good, but it doesn't look terrible either. So I don't know that I'm going to fade it out, right? And then we'll see also what it looks like in the next, 55 minutes, hour or so until we get to lock. But right now, the hourly weather forecast, 35% chance of rain at the start of the game, 33% chance in the middle of the game, then towards the end of the game, 40% chance of rain, and then 50% chance of rain after the game, 50% chance of rain holding throughout the night. So certainly if it starts raining, it looks like it's not going to stop. So if the game starts in a rain delay, that's a massive concern. If the game goes into a rain delay in the middle, that would be cause for concern. But I don't think that it's a game that's so risky that it's just like a lock to get rained out. So, I mean, it's 35 to 40% chance of rain. So I know what you said right there is that you're looking to go about half the field. Do you have your lineups locked in right now? Is that what you're doing, or is it still something
I've got it? No, I've got my lineups made already. Just in the event that I'm assuming we're going to get some different stuff. I'm going to get a different Dodgers lineup too. I have like 2% of those guys going around. I'm going to have to go in and manually just adjust some stuff there. But right now, I don't have Darvish in my pool. I just took that entire game out of my pool as it exists right now. If we get news, I mean, I already have a build that is locked in a CSV that in the event that this game is good to go, I've got it set there as well. I think the really intriguing part, if we get news that this game is good to go, is just stacking up all the righties here of the Padres. I mean, you have Pham, Tatis, Machado. I mean, all three of those dudes. I mean, 46.4% hard hit percentage for Pham, Tatis, 55.3%, an X slugging of 631, just the dumbest stuff imaginable. I think that getting to those three specifically, if people are going to be removing them from their pool like me, that is going to be the quick trigger thing I do. Right now, they are the only team you're getting massive leverage with on this entire slate. And again, that's just weather concerns. So I will jam this team. I will be double the field on it because I think that it's just a misprice it's a way under-owned team if we get the news that it's good to go. But I'm not super bullish on it right now.
Yeah, and we've got, by the way, apparently like 50% of the YouTube chat is from the Atlanta area because right now we've got Russell Music is saying it's raining right now. Thomas Steiner, I'm in Georgia, already pulled it. We've got Joe W saying that he sees a 60% chance of rain. Also, Russell Music, same guy said before.
I love MLB DFS. Yeah, we all know nothing.
I just like that. Whenever there's any sort of and also then we also have XXI Assailant Z says that he is in Sewanee, Georgia, and not a drop of rain in sight. So listen,
Sewanee.
Who's
I must know now.
Listen, that all I know is that whatever it may be, we've got almost everybody who's commenting in the YouTube chat right now is from Georgia. We've got a few people saying that it's going to rain, a few people saying it's already going to rain, one guy saying it's not going to rain, but yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to the weather report for sure. Right now, like I said, it looks risky, but it doesn't look like a game that I have to remove from my player pool. But definitely something that we're going to be circling back in another 30 minutes or so. And actually, I need to refresh the pitcher ownership because with the ownership for the hitters coming down, I assume it's come down for the pitchers. But
big time. Yeah, Darvish has come from 45% to 20%.
That's still pretty high for a game with that much rain risk.
That's why I'm just taking him out of my pool right now. I think it's the right way to go. And it's a guy that I do have concerns about. He's 9,200. Again, if you're looking at just overall stuff, of course, he's got like some of the best stuff. Him and Gausman on this slate, just ridiculous. 29.8% K percentage for Darvish. Limits hard contact. Does get the ball up in the air. 18.9 degree launch angle on the season. So there's some lefties there, especially with Jock Peterson in the one hole now. Good acquisition for Atlanta. Doesn't hit for average, but definitely hits for power. Going to be somebody that I think not going to fill the void of a guy like Acuna, but certainly going to be viable.
All right. And by the way, more people weighing in from Atlanta right now, or the Atlanta area anyway. We've got, but this is like a local, becoming like a local. When you watch like the local news, it's like
hey, 7-Eleven, Athens, Georgia.
Through, but yeah, we've got Hagen Jones. It's raining in Decatur right now. And then apparently all of a sudden we've got the OMG father. He's in Stratham, Jason Statham. Bean Dude, he's from Arkansas. He can't see Georgia, but he's not playing it. That is also relevant. But yeah, apparently our viewer, I'm going to have to check the YouTube demographics now that I have access to that information because it appears that everybody is in the Atlanta area. But
this might be good for us long term. I mean, we just need to promote Georgia Bulldogs the entire college football season. We just go talk SEC football every single day. They're doing a lot of the work for us, I guess.
What's one thing really interesting about the I don't know anything about college sports, so I'll just show up. I'll just be the guy to show up in the Rob Lowe hat that just says like college football or something like the meme of him in the NFL hat. But one thing is interesting. So I'm looking at the FanDuel pitcher ownership compared to DraftKings. Mm-hmm. FanDuel, Darvish has come all the way down to 3%, while he's remained at 20% on DraftKings. Why do you think there's such a big difference between the two?
I think it's because it's an easy swap. I think the main thing that you're able to do, so FanDuel, people don't want to leave $2,000 on the table. Darvish is 11-2 over there. So he was never like super, he was popular amongst FanDuel pitcher percentage there before, but 11-2, you're going to be leaving 2-3K on the table, and people don't like to do that on FanDuel. They're going to try to max out most of their lineups. For whatever reason, in MLB, people don't leave salary on the table, even though stacks work out different directions. And on FanDuel specifically, where you're playing one pitcher, I think it's just probably going to spread around everybody else there. So yeah, I mean, if you want to play Yu Darvish, go to FanDuel and play a couple at 11-2 and just burn some $4 lineups that way. But yeah, right now, if I'm not feeling great about the game, 20% is just too much for me.
Yeah, and then so something else now that's really changed the ownership is Kevin Gausman was somebody who I was looking at as a potential contrarian option earlier. Not the case anymore. His ownership has come way up now as people are getting off of Yu Darvish. So Kevin Gausman now 21% projected ownership on DK. FanDuel Gausman, one of also the more popular pitchers on the slate, coming in at 12.4% ownership. I hate this matchup for Gausman. I like the idea of him when he was like 3-4% projected ownership, just because he's been so good this year. I mean, if we look at Gausman's numbers for the year, he's been near unhittable. And actually, we saw a slate early in the year where he pitched against the Dodgers, and I think the Dodgers were a chalk stack against him. This was kind of before it was apparent that Gausman was breaking out this year, and he shut them down at lower ownership. But I mean, Gausman's numbers this year: 1.73 ERA, 2.85 expected ERA. The strikeout stuff has been there, so he's at 30.5% K rate. I just don't like to play him when he's popular in LA against this Dodgers offense. So what are you going to do with Kevin Gausman now that he's become a fairly popular pitcher?
This is a little off topic. Do you know how much Kevin Gausman is making this season? What his salary is for 2021?
I would guess not very much based on the way you've... Oh, no, he's actually making a decent
$532,000.
That's not correct. I have it up on FanGraphs right now.
I put 2021 salary Kevin Gausman, $532,000.
Yeah, on FanGraphs it says he's making $18.9 million.
Oh God, I'm looking at Google. If you just go to Google and you put 2021 salary Kevin Gausman, $532K. I don't know why it came up that way. Maybe that's a different year and maybe that's not updated, but that was what I wanted to bring up because I thought that was just absurd. I'm pulling up his baseball reference here as well. But yeah, if you just Google it, that's what came up earlier. I was going through, I mainly was Google searching him earlier this morning because I wanted to find out what happened for him leaving on Friday because he got scratched from his start. It was issues with his wife, some kind of a pregnancy issue. Sounds like she's going to be okay. I don't know if that affects him pitching wise, but I just know that this matchup is absolutely atrocious. Other than Corey Seager, this entire team is almost back to full strength. Gavin Lux being out of the lineup, I mean, it's only about a 4% difference between him and Zach McKinstry, but having McKinstry in the lineup, I think is definitely going to bolster a little bit of what he looks like. So I want to see McKinstry in there, but I mean, I was looking forward to playing him at reduced ownership when he was around 10, 11%, up to 20, 25 in this spot, and possibility of more if you lose Darvish. It's just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, by the way, you are just absolutely getting drilled in the YouTube chat right now because you are so far off. I don't know what page that was, but yes, Gausman signed.
I literally hit Google. I just did the search on him this morning, and I put in what his salary was. Just go to Google.
Yeah, that's not what his salary is, though. I don't even know. I went to Google. If you search
2021 salary Kevin Gausman, I'm sending a screenshot to post.
18.9 million. Absurd. Yeah, you're absolutely wrong. This is fake news. This is absolutely absurd.
Sending this. This is absurd.
Listen, I'm just trying to figure out who to roster tonight in MLB DFS. And you're saying like, oh, Kevin Gausman's on food stamps. He's pitching for his family.
I don't know why I would bring that up.
And all of a sudden,
I thought it was interesting.
And all of a sudden, I'm looking at the guys. He's doing fine for himself. He made $18.9 million this year. He's gonna have
whatever.
He's doing good. He's doing okay for himself. He's pitching well. He's getting paid. His pockets are full.
I'm sending this to you guys. Oh, message undefined, missing text. What does that even mean?
Oh my! It means you're lying.
It means I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm trying to doctor the picture is what I'm trying to do while we're live on MLB Live Before Lock. Look at that. Literally put 2021 salary Kevin Gausman, and that's what pops up.
Yeah, so according to Tile McGeever, it says that in 2016 he made $500K. But yeah, this is absolutely, you have slandered the good name of Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, I know he's a stud, and I mean he has a top 3 pitch in baseball. So I mean that was just something that I saw this morning that I was like, that can't possibly be right. Kind of just glossed over it, but here we go. That salary was for 2016. Okay, I mean I put in 2021 salary because I was curious about it, and that's what had come up. But we're going to continue on because we have a fantasy baseball show to talk about.
All right. So, I mean, the more important point with Kevin Gausman is I liked him when he was a contrarian option. And this is funny. Same. This is why ownership matters so much in MLB DFS. Obviously, Gausman's situation has not changed from this morning to today. He's the same price. He's the same matchup. But now my ownership to him is going to go way lower just because I don't like what's happened with his ownership. I want to be underweight to the field on Kevin Gausman. I can't reasonably play this much of him in a really tough matchup against Los Angeles. There are also a little bit of spin rate concerns. It's gotten down a little bit since the foreign substance crackdown. He's still pitching well, but still, this is just a brutally tough matchup. And now, we know that he's, eating good, so maybe he's not as hungry right now.
Yeah, no, he's not going to try as hard is the narrative we've now found because he's making, 36 times more than I thought he was this morning. So there it is.
So most importantly now, just a simple question: over or underweight to Kevin Gausman for even tournaments?
I'm going to be underweight to that number if it stays at 20%, and mainly because I think it could trend up a little bit too, based on the weather. The ramifications of losing a 45% pitcher is gigantic. I mean, it was going to be 45% for you, Darvish. Now I just refreshed it; he's at 13%. I mean, this is just like. Yeah, he's right now coming in with 13% ownership, which will either be zero or you're going to have like the best tournament pitcher play of all time if the weather stays good.
He is just absolutely tanking in terms of the ownership. We don't have to worry about the ownership at all. That is on Jock Market, the sponsor of today's show. Yeah. So Jock Market, if you guys aren't familiar with it, just a different way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of building lineups with any kind of salary restraints, you're just playing the players as if they are stock. So there's an IPO period. You bid on them prior to lock. And then once it starts, you can buy and sell players after lock. And if you want to sign up at Jock Market and you're new to the site, there is a special promo code for anybody making a deposit for the first time. Use the promo code Awesemo, get up to a $50 bonus on your first deposit. That is only for new depositors and only for you right there. I'm pointing at you, person in the other side of the camera screen. Promo code Awesemo. Go check it out. But anyway, another guy who is coming in with lower ownership on the top end of the pricing range now, who I think is now starting to look like a little bit more of an appealing pivot to me. Shohei Ohtani, at least on FanDuel, is picking up almost no ownership right now. And then actually, I'm going to have to refresh this again because I just realized I'm looking at the numbers that are ever changing. And let's see, Ohtani. Yep. Well, now he's 23% on DraftKings. Ohtani still only 5% on FanDuel. So tough matchup for him at Oakland. There's so much variance in Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher because we've seen it at times this year. He might come out, have no clue where the strike zone is, might not make it out of the first inning. We've seen that happen against the Yankees. But for the kind of upside Ohtani brings to the table, once again, vastly different play DraftKings versus FanDuel. But at 5% projected ownership on FanDuel, Ohtani to me is an appealing pitching option. So what are you going to make of Ohtani? DK versus FanDuel. DK, by the way, Shohei Ohtani is projected for 23% ownership.
I just love Shohei Ohtani. I will always be 30.7% K percentage. That's as good as you're going to find on this slate if you take, the Atlanta and San Diego game off the board here. And it's kind of ironic because it's actually the other side of that of Darvish. It's Kyle Muller in his 4 starts has a higher K percentage, which is kind of ironic. But either way, 30.7%, huge upside that exists in that arm. And if you're going to have him in under a quarter of the lineups, I want more than that. I understand that there's maybe giving up a little bit of equity there. He does give up some hard contact, 42.6% on the season. My biggest concern with him is always when he starts walking dudes. He got a little bit squeezed in that Yankees performance. I watched pretty much that entire game. It was sadness. It also took like 8 hours because there were rain delays, but he didn't get out of the first. 12.4% walk percentage on the season. He's a feast or famine guy. I think the best way to approach this is I'm going to be overweight on Ohtani. I'm going to make sure I have some specific athletic stacks on the other side of it in the event that he is walking dudes, because it can get ugly for him. And then you get into this Angels bullpen, and that is a good thing as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing also is we've seen some of these games where Ohtani doesn't pitch well. It just becomes a disaster because they're still really cautious with him. And so we saw like the game that I'm using as the example is the Yankees game where, he just wasn't able to get anybody out. And they're just like, hey, Ohtani is our future. He's tremendously valuable for us. And if he is not pitching well, they will yank him early. And so definitely there's a lot of variance there. I think almost every single Ohtani start this year, I've been higher on him as a pitcher than the field while also stacking at him higher than the field. Just a spot that I always think brings a whole lot of GPP upside. The next guy that I think we need to talk about is going to be Kyle Gibson, a guy who's kind of come out of nowhere this year because Gibson has always been a well below average major league pitcher. And now just all of a sudden this year, we're looking at a guy who's been thrust into the Cy Young conversation, 2.29 ERA in the American League, 3.52 expected ERA, 3.47 FIP. So definitely expecting some regression to come. And we saw a little bit of that start last game, but the matchup he has today against the Tigers is a pretty appealing one. And the other thing to consider too is I think that Gibson comes with a pretty high floor for this particular slate, just because the pitchers either have rain concerns on the high end or it's just bad matchups. They're high variance guys. I think Gibson is one of the safer pitchers on the slate, but I'm not exactly sure if he has the upside to win a tournament. So what are you doing with Gibson on the slate?
Playing a ton of Gibson. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills on this slate because I'm comparing. What you have to do is you have to compare them to what these other options are. And it's like, what do we have? People are arresting me now, I think.
Yeah, it's probably
yeah,
Jordan,
because I lied about
yellow.
salaries or something.
Yeah.
Just outwardly lying gets you arrested now on YouTube. But anyway, I love getting to Kyle Gibson in this spot. He got shelled last time out against, but not even shelled. He just didn't perform that well. Gave up 8 hits, 5 earned, ended up still putting up double-digit DK points. There's a lot of upside for him in this spot. Just looking at the Detroit Tigers as a matchup up against right-handed pitching, second most K percentage on the season, 26.7% against that handedness. Their ISO 151, kind of middle of the road, 89 WRC plus. I really like targeting the Tigers pretty much every single slate. And I thought Kyle Gibson would come in with more ownership than a guy like Ryan Yarborough, but Ryan Yarborough has ownership that I'm having a really tough time understanding. And I know that this Baltimore Orioles lineup is god awful and it's terrible and it's a great ballpark and all of these other things. But if I'm going to see his K percentage right around 19.7%, expected slugging 403 on the season, yes, he can limit the hard contact at an elite level, but he's still kind of, I don't know. I don't think he's justified to be nearly 40% owned on this slate when you have Kyle Gibson. I get they're a different price. It's 400 more. It's not even that much whatsoever. I mean, the question is, how are you like dealing with this entire 8K range? And so for me, give me Ohtani, who's under 25%, who has by far the highest K percentage and the most upside in that range. And then, being lower on Grenky and Yarborough just feels like the right way to play this slate. But what are you kind of doing in this upper Ks altogether?
Now just looking at some of the updated ownership for Yarborough, I'm updating my lineups to get more exposure to Baltimore stacks. Like the spot for Yarborough, particularly at FanDuel, he's the chalk pitcher by far at this point. Cash games play Yarborough, but in tournaments, the Orioles are becoming a pretty appealing option to me just because Yarborough has become so popular. And Yarborough is fine, right? He's a good pitcher, but it's not like he's some, lights out ace type pitcher that we need a roster on every single slate. Ryan Yarborough this year, he's a 4.3 ERA, 3.86 expected ERA, 4.3 FIP, only a 19.7% K rate. To me, if we were just looking at the salaries and didn't have ownership, it'd be like, okay, Yarborough's in play. The ownership to me, though, is totally not warranted. So I'm going to make it a priority right now to try to make Orioles stacks for leverage purposes. This is just a crazy amount of ownership going to, an okay pitcher. He's fine, but I just don't get why everybody's like, oh my God, 8,600 Yarborough. We have to have him in 50% of the lineups. It's a little crazy to me.
It is outrageous. And so I'm glad you're on the same page with me there because Ryan Yarborough was decent. He came in, I feel like I played him as a PLR, the like middle reliever guy forever for Tampa Bay. And now he's starting. They're not doing as much of the first inning stuff as what they were doing in the past, but I just don't know. I don't understand the ownership. It has to just be because you look at that lineup up and down, and outside of the top four, it has no Mullins then as well, but Yarborough's been much better against lefties. There isn't a single lefty in the freaking lineup. Like that's really what it comes down to is the Orioles just kind of removed everything out of there. It makes no sense that they have a 3.4 run implied total for it. I mean, plus 250 you can get on some Orioles in your life. I don't mind that either in this spot. Sure. I mean, Spencer Watkins sucks, but like I really enjoy getting to Orioles stacks. I'm alongside you there. And then I'm going to have way, way, way under the field on Yarborough.
Yeah, that's I'm changing all my lineups for this right now. And by the way, guys, if you haven't done it yet, there could be some exciting things happen in the show. Number one, we could see Eric arrested and dragged down in the middle of the broadcast. All the more reason. Number one, don't go anywhere. Stick around to the end. Also, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Because listen, also the other thing too, if Eric gets arrested on stream, we are without a doubt cutting it up, and it's going to be, I don't know if you could pin stuff to YouTube, but it is staying at the top of the YouTube page for forever. So all the more reason you definitely want to be sticking around, watch the rest of the show. Like the video and subscribe because the police are out to get Eric after his slanderous claims about Kevin Gausman being poor. But
Google,
yeah.
blame Google.
Yeah, I'm sure it was Google, not the fact that 100% of people in the YouTube chat were able to figure out the appropriate rate. We got Jordan in the chat saying,
sorry,
let's get
everybody.
arrested.
I'm sorry. I'm
Leslie,
better than
who I'm almost positive is friends with you in real life. She's saying that she would personally love to see Eric arrested. Listen, me too, but I like Eric, but for the content. I mean, I don't know, there's anybody I know.
Leslie, we were supposed to hang out this weekend with a rabbit. We're no longer. So she has some Instagram rabbit she is going to be babysitting this weekend. That's not a lie. I was going to say, it might seem like all I'm doing is just lying on the stream now. Leslie confirmed babysitting rabbit on Instagram. And it's in like the North Hollywood area. So I think we're going to go get drinks. But I don't know if I want to anymore if she wants to see me arrested. That's not a great basis for a friendship.
And the other thing, too, is, I mean, I don't know anybody who I'm friends with who's less equipped for jail time than you. So, I mean, that I don't think that would go well for you at all with your pretty eyes and whatnot. You're like, yeah. I don't know, maybe Jordan will show up with his yellow. Maybe you borrow Jordan's yellow shirt when you go to prison. It would be It'd be a whole event. But yeah, listen, guys, that's all the more reason to stick around here. So yeah, Ryan Yarborough also, this is once again another slate where we just have to make a ton of adjustments to lineups because of rain news and whatnot as we're going along. But
Jordan Klein is the funniest freaking person on planet Earth. It's fine. Spag shows up in a police outfit to Eric's house. Honestly, that would be the greatest thing of all time. That's a different situation altogether. But oh man,
that's his new job now.
We miss you, Spags.
He's just arresting people who tell lies on the internet.
There it is.
On the high end, the only other guy who we haven't really discussed yet, Zach Grenky. Another guy who's popular. I find it really hard to get exposure to Zach Grenky also. I get that Grenky has a little bit of name value. He's been okay this year, but there's no strikeout equity in rostering Zach Grenky this year. Numbers 3.59 ERA, 4.13 expected ERA, but strikeout rate down to an 18.5%, career low strikeout rate. Some of these guys in the upper mid-range tier, I just think they're going with too much ownership. One of them being Zach Greinke, 26% projected ownership. Ryan Yarborough now at 38%. Now, I'd rather get to somebody like a Kyle Gibson, who has a pretty good matchup against Detroit and just doesn't appear to be picking up anywhere near the same ownership.
Oh my God, we have a Spag sighting in the chat. It's so beautiful. Just got completely thrown there for a second. But yes, Zach Greinke, definitely going to be lower on him, and Ryan Yarborough as well. It just becomes like, if you're going to play those guys, you're basically playing them hoping that the other guys in that range fail. That seems like a stupid reason to play them at higher ownership than the guys who have better strikeout stuff. So also, I've been kind of trying to factor this in a little bit more. It's something that Adam said on a show we were doing. I think it was a 14-gamer on a Tuesday, so a little different situation, a more limited games. We have a possibility of losing another one here, but I think that there is still positives to draw from a guy who just strikes out people and has that elevate their floor a lot more than just somebody who's safe. So looking at Grenky and Yarborough, who don't have the elite strikeout stuff, I mean, Grenky is striking out the lowest percentage of batters out of any single year in his entire career at 18.5% this entire season. I'm not saying he's dust because he's still getting by. But the expected slugging is 411, 255 expected batting average. I mean, these are just not sustainable numbers. Eventually, it's going to catch up to him. I'm hoping it's today against Cleveland because I definitely am higher on my normal J-Ram Franmil Reyes combo today.
Yeah, it's not a spot that I really love for Cleveland either, because Greinke's not a pitcher really see get shelled all that often. I'm going to go through his game logs really quick, but just more so that I just think he's picking up way too much ownership, and there's other guys in the price range who, Kyle Gibson, I don't think he's the highest upside GPP pitcher, but I don't think Yarborough is either. I don't think Zach Greinke is. And at least with Kyle Gibson, we have a guy who's in the same price range, just picking up less ownership with, I think, at least a comparable outlook on the slate. But when do you think is the last time that Zach Greinke allowed more than 4 runs in the start?
Oh God. Has he done it this year? Maybe once this year? I'll say April. Middle April.
April 12th. He's done it once this year. And the last time he gave more than 3 runs was June 10th. That was a game in Boston against the Red Sox. So, it's hard for me to really reasonably want to stack against Zach Greinke. He's just not a guy who's gotten hit very hard this year. But I just don't want to be anywhere near where the field is on him. So we've gone through a lot of guys we do not like on this slate. So far, the players we like Kyle Gibson, we like Shohei Ohtani. Who are the other pitchers that you actually do like relative to the ownership today, Eric?
Relative to ownership, I think when you get down to the bottom end of this, I'm less concerned about ownership. It's not that discernible going to like a Cole Irvin for 2%. I'm not playing Cole Irvin. Tony Gonsolin, I think, is going over-owned right now at 11.3%. 8,200, I just don't see the pitches there for him to get there. I think that was something that Adam had said on our previous show as well, that I caught at the very end there. And I think that definitely rings true, where I don't see at 8,200 him paying it off. Again, playing him is basically hoping everybody else above him fails. Like, there's really no other way around it. So I'm not going to be getting there whatsoever. I have one guy, and I'm not really sure how I feel about this right now, but Nick Pavetta, I don't know why, but he was coming up in a bunch of my lineups here. Nick Pavetta is 7,900. It's not like you're getting any kind of a discount on him either. It's not a great spot. I just think that he's going way under-owned in our top pitchers tool compared to his chance of finishing as a top 2 pitcher. I mean, it's near 10%, but at 2% in this massive $5 on DraftKings, I just think that there's some – I think he might be a guy who could slip through a little bit. Toronto is just a beastly team to be facing, but Nick Pavetta has enough stuff on the book. Like, at 27.8% K percentage, I'm at least willing to roll the dice a little bit considering the ownership. How about you?
So let's see. Nick Pavetta's numbers this year. By the way, also, I am leaning towards just taking the Padres game out of my player pool now. Also, just looking at the latest weather, it does look like it's getting a little bit worse. So another Animal House reference, because being brought up in the chat. I currently have a 0.0 shares of Yu Darvish, but Nick Pavetta, I do agree. Looking at his numbers, there is some strikeout upside here. 27.8% K rate. It is a career best for him. The underlying numbers, he's given up some runs this year, and he was a guy who was terrible the last couple of years. However, this is the type of pitcher who I think kind of makes sense as a high variance GPP play, especially on a slate where we don't like a lot of the pitching. Nick Pavetta, current projected ownership for him, we have him now, like you said, very low owned, only 1.3%. The matchup against the Toronto Blue Jays leaves a lot to be desired. He's not going to be a core play for me, but sure, I'm willing to get more than 1% on him. Like, how heavy are you thinking you're going to be on him?
I have 8% right now in the $5, and I'm fine with that right now. I'm basically at the exact number that we have for his chance of finishing as a top 2 pitcher. I don't want to get carried away. I don't like picking on Toronto. I really, really do not like picking on Toronto, but I think that there's enough Ks that exist in that arm where if he's on, it could be a sneaky spot to go to him at very low ownership. And I'm kind of looking for any edge I possibly can in that massive tournament. 70,000 entries. If you're trying to get to the top of that thing, you got to make some uncomfortable plays. And I'm willing to be rolling with him in a couple lineups.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing, too, that I think people should consider here, Nick Pavetta, he actually gets paid below minimum wage. He works for tips. So it is really important for him that he pitches well today because, if he doesn't – listen, he's very dependent on pitching well and getting tips from DFS players. So Nick Pavetta, a guy who I'm sure that was part of your consideration. That's the main reason you like him, correct?
I'm back. Yeah, no, that was not part of my consideration, man. Never use Google and then don't repeat something or try to bring up an interesting stat on your little notepad where you're like, you know what? This is interesting. I saw this morning, because if you're wrong, you're going to get tortured for life. So I'm excited for that. But yes, I think Nick Pavetta, it makes sense for me as a lower owned dart. I'm not saying that he's going to survive in this matchup, but I think the number of times he does, you're getting some massive leverage on the field for somebody who I think is very live, has a better K percentage, nearly a 10% better K percentage than one Ryan Yarborough. So let's go that direction and try to get a little bit different.
Yeah, Nick Pavetta's salary this year, he signed a 1 year, 613,000 500. So making a little over 600K this year. So, a little more than the Gausman's fake salary from before. But Nick Pavetta, once again,
Somebody
not
says I have
contract.
A police record. I do not have a police record. What I do? Not pay a parking ticket at Iowa State in 2007. That's about all.
This is fun. YouTube chat. What crimes does it look like Eric was most likely to commit?
My God. We're so far off the rails.
Yeah, I have jokes I would like to say, but I'm not going to say any of them. We'll leave it up. We'll leave it up to.
Does it involve a bridge?
No, that's legal. That's all consensual. Who cares what we do for $8? It's whatever. That's nobody's business. But
I want that entry fee.
That kind of sounded like the popsicle guy from Family Guy. The
the popsicle guy. Yes,
Yeah.
from Family Guy. Yes. Sorry, I'm just watching everybody go nuts. Tax evasion, jaywalking, how poor, happy ending massage, indecent exposure. I mean, how in the world is this Chris Karen? This is going to get ugly. Yes, it did. Oh man, peeping Tom, murder. What is going on? Oh man. Well, okay. Should we talk stacks? How about that?
No, we're not done with pitchers yet. I think we still have to hit on some of the pitchers here, but listen, YouTube chat's blowing up. This is a big topic. Everybody, listen, he's going to get arrested sometime during the show. It's all this is going to come to light in due time. But in the meantime, who are some of the cheaper pitchers you like? We've kind of only talked about some of the more expensive guys.
Okay, so I have a couple. My pitching pool is pretty condensed today. So, I mean, I'm taking those shots on Nick Pavetta. I have some Alec Mills as well, 6,700. He's about as cheap as I want to be going to. Casey Mize, we're not going to see enough of a pitch count for him to probably be under consideration. Playing him would also be hoping everybody else kind of gets eviscerated at the bottom end. I don't feel good about playing John Lester. I have him in 2% of lineups. He's right now at 1.6%. So yeah, he's in literally 2 of my lineups today. So I don't want to be saying that I want to play him at all, but he's 6,300 and Miami is not very good. Maybe he can survive in that spot and just be the cheaper pitcher on the board that exists. But I don't really see a reason to be going super deep down on the board. Cole Irvin, I have no interest in playing at 7,800. I think it's pretty easy to just get up into that 8K range, combine a couple of them there. I guess Caleb Smith is the main talking point we have left here. I have no idea what to do with Caleb Smith because if we're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani, Caleb Smith is basically Shohei Ohtani on crack with a little less consistency. How are you handling him?
So Caleb Smith, I kind of view him similarly to Ryan Yarborough, as in that I don't think, he's like the poor man's Ryan Yarborough on this slate, where, a lefty pitcher doesn't generate a whole bunch of strikeouts. I don't think he's a particularly good pitcher. So, but it's just the ownership is so high, and I'm at 23%. The matchup is great against the Pirates, kind of like for Ryan Yarborough. The matchup is great against the Orioles, but so Ryan Yarborough is kind of a middle of the road pitcher. Caleb Smith is just a bad pitcher who's pitching against the Pirates, picking up a ton of ownership. So once again, my preference is to play the Pirates tonight than it is to play Caleb Smith at 23% projected ownership. I'm sure I'm going to end up with some exposure to Caleb Smith. And by the way, we've gotten so off the rails with some of our, I'm so behind on updating my lines for trying to take Yu Darvish out and the Padres game. But that aside, I'm going to be
show
more
is
apt.
Outrageous at the moment. I mean, this is live before lock after dark. I mean, that's what this has turned into basically. Also, some of the things that people are saying, I can't believe they haven't been filtered, but I guess that's part of what's happening. I like how there's also 1,000 people in here now. That's way more than there were. So I think the alarm bells went off where they're like, oh, Eric's getting bashed, and everybody flooded into YouTube chat and just lit it on fire. So it's great to see everybody. This is fantastic.
Yeah, listen, it's the go-tos. I know what the people like, and it is unfortunately making fun of you. But listen, there's 99% of the world enjoys it. Unfortunately, you're in the 1%. But yeah,
I've always said I enjoy taking shit, because if you can't take shit, I don't want to be friends with you, because you got to be able to make fun of yourself. Life is way too short. But also, when you say blowing a dude in public, not ideal to hear in the old chat here. That's not so nice. There we go. Hidden by one Jordan Klein. Look at this guy. He's on top of the things. Love you too, Creamsicle.
Yeah. Hey, listen, nothing wrong with spreading some truth amongst the lies that have been spread on this show. But listen, I agree with you on Alec Mills. Alec Mills, here's one thing that really stands out to me about Alec Mills. Early in the year as a starter, he was pretty restricted from a pitch count perspective, but we've seen that slowly ramp up. So last 4 starts for Alec Mills, 77 pitches, 69, 92, 95. So back-to-back starts over 90 pitches. Once again, do I think Alec Mills is any good? No, not really. But look at some of the other pitchers that we're talking about getting a massive amount of exposure to. That's really what it is. So, when Caleb Smith is a comparable price to Alec Mills, and Caleb Smith is picking up 20x the ownership of Alec Mills, it's just really more a case of, I don't think if we play this slate out, 100 times that Caleb Smith ends up in the lineup, in the optimal lineup, 20 times the amount of times that Alec Mills does. So, with that in mind, I just think he's going too low owned relative to some of the other options. So Alec Mills, I think for tournament purposes, makes sense to get to. And by the way, Anthony Davis has left a super chat for us. Ted Bundy, Wayne Gacy or low-key Walter White. Sorry, E, but I couldn't help myself. I think Walter White, listen, Eric would be way too panicky to be a Walter White character. There's no chance.
I'm the man who knocks.
Oh, that was a pretty convincing voice. But I still know, like, if there was a drug deal going down and I showed up and Eric was there, I just couldn't take the situation seriously. I'm just leaving. I'm like, this isn't the guy.
Greg?
Because I assume I'm getting arrested. I'd be like, okay, this is clearly a very poor job of an undercover.
We should go on to stacks now is what I think we should do.
We probably should. There's not that much time left in the show. But before we do, any other pitchers that we've not mentioned yet?
Nope, nothing.
Heisenberg?
I got nothing for you.
Nothing else, Eisenberg?
Nope,
all right.
Zero.
All right, so let's move over to the stacks now. By the way, this is we're really trying to balance the two. We're making it entertaining, making fun of Eric, and then also getting in the relevant baseball information. By the way, also, if there's any other pitchers you guys want to check out, the top pitchers tool, that is free over on Awesemo.com. So you can go check that out and compare all the latest ownership odds and our projected odds of pitchers being individual, chance of being top scores. But heading over to the stacks now, let's just start with the Padres because they are a team that's popping up as being significantly under-owned in our top stacks tool. The reason being, obviously, because that's in projections, it's really hard to account for weather. So we talked about some of the risk with Darvish, but are you also handling the offense in the same way? We just don't want anything to do with them right now.
Yeah, right now I don't have anything to do with them, but I saw in the middle of chat going 50 miles an hour that we did have Loco drop in quickly and say that that the chance of postponement had gone down for Atlanta, that he had kind of basically said that he thought that it was going to be a little bit different. If I can get some confirmation on that, that would be fantastic. But it looked like he was saying that he believed the chance of postponement was much lower than what it was before. I want to just double check on that. Definitely want to be verifying my facts today. I can tell you that much, but I think that in the event that we get the go ahead, you want to be playing a ton of Padres. You just do, because the upside that they've shown, and I'm not talking about 24 runs on Friday, which was just so dumb. Can we just say that? But they have so much ridiculous power that exists in this lineup, well above average in every single regard, decent enough ballpark. I have no problem getting to a ton of Padres bats in the event that we think that game is good to go. But I just don't know if we're going to get the go ahead here yet. I still don't have it in my pool. What are you doing with them?
Yeah, I just took that game out entirely for the weather concern. And also let's go to the old World Wide Web. Let's see what we have for the latest weather info. Still seeing the same stuff I said, but I saw before where it was, like the 35 to 50% chance of rain. Man, we've got like 40 minutes to go until that game locks. At least it doesn't lock right at 7. But yeah, for right now, we started the show. I had it in. I took it out as we went. I'm going to leave it out at least until after the show. And I'm probably going to leave it out after that, unless there's something like, News God, if there's something that you see about the weather that's changed, pretty significantly since we've started, throw something into the YouTube chat that we could see, or add us in the in Slack so we could see there. But yeah, right now I have it out of my player pool.
Yeah, he's got us covered. He always does. Much appreciated. But oh man, I think other than the Padres, I mean, then we can just start having a lot of fun, because there's really not a lot of leverage to be had on this entire slate. Your most positively leveraged team is the Angels, and I have no desire to stack up the Angels without Ohtani. And then it's more of who am I going to be lighter on? I'm going to be much lighter on Tampa Bay, sitting at 11% ownership share. Arizona's the one team that I find it hard for me to get away from. I'm not sure. Maybe that ownership is around 8.6%, but Cole Calhoun is going to be massively owned at 2K. I think that there's enough pivots that exist. If you want to play anybody, Phil Gosselin's not a great hitter by any means, but he is batting cleanup for the Angels in this spot against a lefty in Cole Irvin. So I would be all right making that pivot from Cole Calhoun a little bit, but Cole Calhoun's a fantastic play. Feels a little cashy for me on this slate. In tournaments, I find it hard to want to play a guy who's going to be 25% owned period on an 11-game slate, but yeah, the Angels are a tough one for me to get a gauge on what I wanted to. Going down the rest of the top stacks that we have currently in like ownership, Cincinnati, they're in an undeniably great spot, but man, they're just going so highly owned, and every single one of the hitters is kind of picking up the ownership. So I think that that's another team that I'm hoping doesn't completely burn me. But what are you doing on the top end of these stacks?
Yeah, so once again, that the Padres game really messed with a lot of my lineups. And here's something that's also unfortunate now. Based on some of the pitcher ownership, I really like getting to these cheaper offenses, but I hate paying up for a lot of the pitchers at the same time too. So at least by my process, the team that I was coming out with the most ownership to is the Baltimore Orioles. And the reason is just because of all the ownership on Yarborough, I think is a little bit unwarranted. Obviously that's not a high end stack, so it doesn't really answer your question, because the other team also that I really like a lot by my process would be the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I think Caleb Smith is going wildly overowned. So at least in terms of an expensive offense, I think the ones that make the most sense are going to be the Mets and the Red Sox. The Red Sox, mostly because I don't find their pricing to be all that prohibitive on this slate. And then the Mets also, I know that they're projected for a decent amount of ownership now, but there's a lot of anti-Mets bias right now, just in general. I wouldn't be surprised if that number ultimately ends up being underneath that. But in terms of high-end stacks, those are the two that I'm getting to the most in terms of expensive teams, the Mets and the Red Sox.
Yeah, I wasn't getting to a ton of Mets. I kind of snap triggered when McCann wasn't in the lineup a little bit. Not that that matters a ton, because you're looking mainly 1 through 6, but 1 through 6 generally gets about the appropriate ownership. Pete Alonso's going really high owned at his current price over on DraftKings. I mean, for him to be 5,900 and still get around 16.1% ownership, I don't know. All these guys seem like they're getting a lot of ownership. I do like, if you're going to get to anybody unique, I mean, Luis Guillermo 3.6%. I don't want to play him. JD Davis, I'm fine with in the 5-hole. I'm shocked he's under 5% out of this entire grouping when everybody else is 10% or better. But yeah, Thomas Nido is not the catcher you wanted to be seeing in that lineup for the entire, a 111 ISO for the season. No, thank you. So, I mean, I feel like it's hard for me to get different with some of these Met stacks because I can't really play Nido or Guillermo in those. So maybe that's kind of my major concern with them, is that I don't see a different route to be going with them. Did you include those two in your bats, or you're not really that concerned about it?
So you said Guillermo, and then who is the other name?
And then the other guy, Nido, who I just have zero desire to play.
Let's see. Guillermo, I have in 1% of lineups right now, and Nido, I don't have any lineups with him. So
okay,
yeah,
also, there you go. Good.
The other thing too, the Mets, the core hitters on the Mets are not expensive today. We've got. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. I do have some Nido exposure. I think he's reasonable for stacks at 2,600, but I wasn't getting to Guillermo. But I mean, if you look at the core hitters on the Mets, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Dominic Smith, Michael Conforto, Pete Alonso, a little more very expensive, 5,900 on DK, and expensive on FanDuel as well. But outside of him, there is not one unreasonably priced Mets bat. So, I mean, I think the price points are good for the picking on this team as well.
All right. Team McB says Guillaume. Love that. Thank you, my dude. Always like to be able to pronounce, just in case the friends and family are tuning in here to see liars, people who get arrested, and people who can't pronounce the last names of their children. I want to make sure that I always get that correct if I can. But yeah, Guillaume, not going to be somebody in my pool here either. But yeah, going down the rest of my exposures. I mean, I don't know, outside of Arizona, and I'm definitely going to be over the field on Toronto at the same time that I talk about liking to take some shots on Pavetta. I mean, there's just such a ridiculous amount of upside with Toronto that if you get them at flat ownership compared to their top stack percentage, 7.8% top stack percentage, rated around 8% ownership, that is a time that I'm happy to go over the field on Toronto because of the ridiculousness that exists in that lineup, and because they're so expensive. People are going to try to find different routes for pitching, but I think there's just enough cheap guys. If you want to be playing Calhoun or some of the other guys, Gammel's down there at the 4-hole, super cheap price on DK as well. There's ways to make that stack work, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. And pitching, if we're going to be taking Darvish off the board, it's going to be spread out here anyway. And I'm not going to try to get so crazy to go to super low owned pitchers to make like a expensive Toronto stack work, but it's just way too high of upside of an offense for me not to get there.
By the way, we do have a couple super chats here from Ron. He's saying Daffy Nation, mass multi-entry, insert 1976 EMAC joke. Listen, EMAC, first of all, EMAC is a hand builder. This is a guy who's been he wakes up early in the morning, drinks his coffee, starts making his lineups by hand, and then as soon as there's any kind of late scratch, he just melts down and panics. But listen, EMAC since 1976, he's the first person in the history of DFS to build 150 lineups. He did it on a typewriter, actually, but that was way before 1976. And a follow up, he says that Seth sucks too. So that is going to be that is a jab at Seth in our Slack chat, who is a huge EMAC fan. I don't know anybody who's a bigger EMAC fan than Seth, but All right, Stacks. Oh, by the way, we also had a question, or not a question, a comment in the Slack chat from Jeremiah Johnson. He said, I'm all over the Marlins bats today, much to his dismay. Yeah, I am not all over the Marlins bats today. Is that a team that you got to at any kind of volume?
Yeah, that's going to be a no from me, dog. I'm not going to. Yeah, I don't really want to be. Again, it's a team where the only hitters I really want to play from it are the only players that anybody else is going to play from it. So you're not really getting any kind of leverage with that team. Do you want to go down and play Lewis Brinson and Monte Harris? I sure don't. I don't really think that there's that big of a reason. And John Lester, it's a decent enough hitting environment, 86 degrees, 50% humidity. John Lester, like, he has a deal with the devil or something. It seems like for me, stacking up against John Lester just never goes the way that I think it's going to go. And it's just not a very good lineup. I would be preferring to go other directions than Miami here, especially, let me see, what are they coming in at for our top stack ownership for them? I mean, it's nothing substantial. Yeah, 4.5%, 6% ownership share. I think we can do a little bit better on this slate.
I dislike my lineup so much. I'm just going through looking at them right now, and it's like, who am I rostering here? This is nonsense. My pitchers right now, it's like I'm kind of actually finding it hard to get too low.
Who's your highest
on
owned batter is my fun question.
My highest owned batter right now is all right, well, Ohtani's popping up as a batter in Fantasy Cruncher, but he's listed as a pitcher, so that's not going to count. Highest owned batter is Jesse Winker.
Okay. Yeah, mine's Jordan Alvarez. So I just think the lefties in Houston are going, I wouldn't say under-owned, going back over to the top stacks tool. I love Houston on this slate. Again, it's another potent offense that you're getting flat ownership on. And if it's a team that I think sets up so easily to stack where you have so much power up and down the entire lineup, outside of Maldonado, like it's pretty easy at 6.2% top stack percentage, which is 5th on the board here today, or 6th on the board, 6.6% ownership share. It's just such a good offense. If we're going to take San Diego and Atlanta off the board, we're going to kind of spread it to some other places. I'm really, really high on Houston. That is my favorite stack of the day.
Yeah, I have exposure to Houston, not wildly different from the field. I'm a little bit overweight to them. What did you do with some of these offenses who I think do make for really good leverage spots? We just don't really need the salary savings. Like, I'm trying to force myself to, like I said before, Baltimore and Pittsburgh stacks, just Baltimore and Pittsburgh stacks, just because the pitchers they're going up against that view is so wildly overowned. But some of these lineups are leaving so much salary on the table just the way the pitching is set up. But
that's okay. That is the way that this slate should work out. If you're doing this slate correctly. So one of the things I like to do when I'm playing in a 70,000 person tournament, like right off the bat for baseball, is I put in like a 49.9 cap, because you should not be putting 50K in, letting it run on Cruncher and possibly having any kind of close to overlap. You should automatically, I have multiple lineups with 1,800, 2,400 left on the table in that big tournament. As the field size gets smaller, I don't think you have to be giving up that much of pitching, but these range of outcomes that we have for these pitchers, I mean, look at the top stack percentage the top 2 percentage for these pitchers. I mean, Darvish, if we take him off the board, Gausman at 20%, is your next guy to be a top 2 pitcher on this slate. 80% of the time, he's not going to finish as a top 2 pitcher. That means that everybody else below him becomes extremely viable. It's just math. Looking at it that way makes it so easy for me to feel comfortable leaving salary on the table. So while it might feel weird if you're hand building out lineups to be zeroing out salary or leaving up equity, because generally what happens is if you're playing Kevin Gausman at 10K, you're going to get closer to zeroing it out. Find ways to leave salary on the table. I have no problem, especially on a day like today with such massive size tournaments, to be doing that whatsoever. I love what you're doing.
Yeah. Here's what I'm referencing though. Anyway, so I'm just looking through. Here's why I'm a little bit like, I have 12% Oriole stacks, and the reason I'm going to dial this back a little bit. What do you think? How much salary do you think is getting left on the table in some of these Oriole stacks for this slate?
I bet like 4 or 5K.
Oh, you've way undershot it, my friend.
Oh,
way
really?
under. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
we're
loving
looking
it.
at. Yeah, we're looking at.
Let me group my lineups by salary.
Yeah, that's what I just did.
47.2 is the most that I have left on a lineup. I mean, I only have 4% Baltimore, but I get it.
Yeah, it's just I have so much of them, and I don't think I could dial it back a little bit. I don't need to have quite that much for leverage. Like, I think if I have, like 7% Baltimore, I think I'll be sitting just fine if they hit Yarborough. I don't need to be sitting on like 15 Orioles stacks that are leaving $7,000 in salary on the table.
Welcome back, Linda Carly. Good to see you again in chat. It's so nice when she stops on by when the bots exist. Absolutely love seeing you. Have a great, fantastic day. But what were you saying there, Greg?
Listen, we don't even know who Linda's talking about. Could be me. It could be you.
Oh, no, she's come at me on shows, and it's fantastic. I absolutely love seeing her. I don't even time her out because you know what? I love the aggro. Let's go. And I don't know how to win. Why do I win then? That's very strange to say.
Yeah, I guess you just get lucky.
I'm very lucky. That's what it is.
So what is your, or do you have a high percentage? Because I don't remember. We keep getting a little off track here, but
sorry.
Orioles and Pirates stacks. Did you end up with a significant amount of them or not really? I know you said 4% Orioles, but what did you stand on the Pirates?
Yeah, I have a lot more Pirates. I have 12%. Okay. They're kind of an easier team to be piecing together with some of the more expensive pitchers. And as I talked about, Gamble there being in the 4-hole kind of makes the pivot off of a Calhoun a little bit more viable there. I guess 5-hole for him. Nagowski 2.3K, Brian Reynolds 3.9K. I would rather just give me Gamble versus Cole Calhoun, because is he going to outperform him 1 out of every 3 times? I don't know. Maybe in this spot he does, but the implied runs, 4.7, 4.9. I got to think it's a little bit more 50-50. So I'm prioritizing getting to more Gamble than Calhoun. That's just kind of a tournament stand I'm taking.
All right. So kind of closing in on lock. Boy, this show really flew by. How are you doing on updating your lineups?
I was doing better until 2 seconds ago, but now I'm going to get back here. I'm going to get back.
Is there anything as you're updating your lineups that you're getting to that is surprising you at all, or something you didn't expect you were going to have, say, 20 minutes ago?
I'm getting a lot more Cleveland, and they don't have that high of an implied run total, but against Zach Greinke, I'm getting to a lot of 2 and 3 mans of them. I usually boost the projections of Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes just to be getting to them. As I said, Zach Greinke's been just limiting the damage. He's not really missing bats here. I think that those are 2 hitters that just have enough pop where you might get some really low owned leverage going to them.
Let's see. What we should do as a fantasy cruncher is loading my final version of the lineups. If you guys haven't checked out yet, in addition to the top props tool we have for MLB and NBA on Awesemo.com, which by the way are free to look at, we also now have a sports betting model, which is just based on some of the power rankings we have for teams based on our own model. It's going to pop out just ROI in terms of best bets for teams, for over-under run totals, and individual money lines. So of all of the lines we have for today's slate, the number 1 line that comes out as being the best bet. This is going to make us feel good. Baltimore Orioles money line plus 230 going up against Ryan Yarborough. Listen, 16% ROI, 16.7% ROI there. It's definitely a spot where I think that we're just looking at kind of similar to DFS. Ryan Yarborough is by no means a bad pitcher. It's a good matchup against the Orioles, but still, he's a guy who looks like he's going overvalued by the public and a guy who shouldn't be picking up nearly as much ownership as he does. So Baltimore Orioles, what do you think of them as a money line bet?
I love it. I think that was the one bet that I threw out there earlier in the show too, that I was just kind of in love with. And there's a 240 that was floating around in a spot as well. If you want to go out and peruse through the different sports books, Odd Shopper is the best way to go find those. But considering I live in California, I might have to do things differently here and there than most people would to be able to go find my spots for things. But yeah, I absolutely love this Baltimore money line play. I definitely clicked it already.
Nice. Yeah, I like it as well. It also just makes sense from the standpoint of I'm going to be a lot higher on the Baltimore Orioles in GPPs than I am on Yarborough. I have some Yarborough in my player pool, but much less than the field, less than half the exposure the field has. I have ownership in the teens to Ryan Yarborough. Ultimately, where did he end up in your final run of lineups from an ownership standpoint?
12%.
Okay. Yeah, we're pretty similar there. I have a couple more percentage points than you, but still a guy I'm going to be pulling for the Orioles side of the game because I think that they're going very underweight. And my single entry lineup that I have on FanDuel is a Baltimore Orioles stack just because I think that Yarborough, at least based on the numbers we have on the site, looks like he's going to be crazy, wildly owned in tournaments today. Something else that I something I like a lot about our sports betting tool is not only is it valuable to see which things to bet on, but it's also valuable to see which things do not have value to bet on. Like very often I talk about the home run props, and it's something that's pretty difficult to find a substantial amount of value on, just because a lot of them are kind of priced at a point where it's like, okay, yeah, this guy is plus 350 to a home run, but what is their actual chance to hit a home run? And then the other side, they're like minus 500. So there aren't that many guys that have any significant value of hitting a home run. We do have Ohtani here, although I would caution just looking at this number. I think the reason it's a little inflated at sports books and compared to our numbers is just because Ohtani is probably not likely to get his full allotment of at bats during a game because he's going to be pitching. So that could be a little bit off in the data. But Ramon Laureano is the current individual hitter, plus 850 odds to hit a home run. He's going to be going up against Shohei Ohtani. But what do you make of that number? Because that's one of the few prop bets for a hitter that I've seen that actually really like from a home run standpoint this year.
I mean, yeah, that's a big number to be getting on Ramon Laureano. I don't mind it. I mean, he's been batting further back in the order of late. So, I mean, I want to be getting more towards the top end on some of the guys because, I mean, him in the 7 hole gets less opportunity. That might be one less at bat in the course of a game, but considering a 41.3% hard hit percentage and plus 850 on that side of it, I don't mind the number.
All right. So we're closing in on lock now. We do have a super chat here, and then I want to circle back on something with the Padres game before we head out. But Jeff Williams said, sorry if we answered already. His internet sucks. Don't worry. So does Eric's Google sucks, giving him all kinds of bad information today. But he's playing the 555 on DK. He wants to know what the best pitching combo is. So I could tell you the pitchers that I like the most just from an exposure standpoint for me right now. It is Shohei Ohtani and Kyle Gibson. For you, who are the 2 pitchers that you have the most exposure to?
Shohei Ohtani and Kyle Gibson.
All right. I dig it. And then one other thing, circling back on the Padres game, have you changed anything there?
No, I'm just trying to frantically update, just making sure that because Tatis was still in my pool for whatever reason. So I'm just getting him back out of it. And then Cleveland just got like way boosted. And so I'm just kind of tempering expectations on them a little bit from where I had them before.
All right. And then let's check out some of the pitcher props here. Yu Darvish strikeouts over 6.5 rates out pretty well. But I think that's pretty risky to go to just because even if that game plays, there's a chance that it ends up getting called off early. So that's something that's a little risky to get to. But here's another number that's on the board that I do like. Tony Gonsolin, under 5.5 strikeout props. That to me looks like a pretty appealing number. We've seen Tony Gonsolin, I feel like, get a little bit overvalued by books a few times this year. And it's not that Tony Gonsolin's a bad pitcher. He just doesn't work all that deep into games. So with that in mind, it's kind of hard to envision him getting to 6 strikeouts. So under 5.5 for Tony Gonsolin, that is a number that I like quite a bit. How do you feel about that one?
Feel great. I just don't think he's going to see a lot of pitches, and he's going to get the short hook here. So and also against San Francisco, I mean, there's enough power that exists in this lineup now, surprisingly enough, power existing in this lineup that there's a strong possibility now that that they can do some damage. Tony Gonsolin's a great pitcher, but yeah, it's just a pitch count issue for me.
All right, I'm going to refresh the ownership here. Let's see if there's anything that stands out in the last couple minutes here. Also, I'm going to jump into the into Slack chat, see if there's anybody, any questions we've got. All right, we could close with this. Jeremiah Johnson wants some home run picks. He says that he is Joey Gallo, not for one home run, but a pair of home runs he's picking. So, Eric, who are you picking to homer today, or just which player would be most advantageous to homer for your lineups?
Yordan Alvarez.
All right. So in the latest run of my lineups, which hitter would I like to homer the most? Ke'Bryan Hayes.
Ooh.
Just, I mean, there's, like we talked about before, a lot of ownership going to Caleb Smith. So Pirates, a team that I like a little bit for getting some leverage. And Ke'Bryan Hayes is now actually in my final run that I updated and ran my lineups. He is currently now my most rostered hitter. So I have Ke'Bryan Hayes and you have Yordan Alvarez. I hope they both homer. But overall, that is going to do it for us today, guys. Be sure to check out for the weather because that is something we've got the Padres game locks in 20 minutes now. So that's something that might have to change something there depending on what it is. I'm sure News God on Negro Loco, he'll have some information on that in our premium Slack chat for Awesemo.com. But other than that, we've got Eric the Criminal, Greg here, Jordan in his yellow shirt. Play us out, Jordan.